The grandfather noticed he was holding the gun in his hand, so he asked him what he intended to do with it.
This, Dad, Mom, Kakeru, I'll murder those bastards. I will murder them all.
His grandpa wanted to advise him to tell the police, but Shun interrupted him and told him he wouldn't tell them, and that no one would stop him from seeking revenge. Therefore, a group of kids were torturing another child in various cruel ways, finding enjoyment in it. The boy being tortured was named Uruma Shun, 12 years old. They took turns hitting and experimenting on him. After their peer confirmed they were done, he approached, grabbed his hand and formed an X sign with his arms, then pushed it against his neck. Shun's eyes were filled with tears, and he told them it hurt, but none of them cared. They were enjoying torturing him. One of them was named Kuga Daichi. The other was Ushiro Yuga, Madoka Hiro, and Senkoji. They are all the same age. However, their leader and the most dangerous of them all was a boy named Shigoku Kyo, whose evil was not apparent on his face. Daishi was impressed by his move and thought he might have learned it from judo. So Shigoku told him he was right, and that it was a technique to end someone's life. His friends were impressed by him and saw him as better than the adults in judo. He continued explaining the move.
If you tighten here, he will die.
Shun couldn't speak. He was choking and saying to himself,
I am really dying. Soon after I became a 5th grader, I started being bullied by these 5. I didn't understand why they did it. It just suddenly happened.
Kyo noticed while on top of Shun that he had soiled his pants. He recoiled and realized that he had almost killed him by himself. Shun coughed disbelievingly.
Did he really intend to kill me?
They left him after they were done torturing him and bid him farewell.
Well, later then.
Test Subject A.
Lab Rat A is the nickname those guys call me.
They're likening bullying as an experiment.
Truly, I can't understand them.
As Shun was returning home, he passed by a small river. Without hesitation, he threw himself into it, but quickly resurfaced. He couldn't bring himself to do it. He desperately wanted to end all the suffering, but he couldn't. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a small cat. His smile returned, and he forgot all that had happened. He hurried home, and upon entering the house's garden, he found his mother and father working together on gardening. His mother was surprised to see him soaked and asked what had happened. He happily told her that he had been playing in the river. He dashed into the house, threw off his shoes and shouted, "Kakeru!" He entered his brother's room, where Uruma Kakeru, 6 years old, was delighted to see him. Suddenly, he noticed that he was soaked. Shun told him that he had been playing in the river. Then Shun vigorously shook his head, spraying cold water on his little brother, who laughed and exclaimed,
It's cold.
Then, Shun excitedly took him near the river and told him that he had found a little kitten. His brother took it and began to cuddle it, very pleased with it. Then he told him they couldn't keep it, but Shun suggested they leave it outside. Then he added,
It's going to be a little secret between us.
The little brother was surprised by this, but intrigued by the idea and found it somehow exciting. Kakeru began to think of a name for the cat. Then suddenly, he turned to Shun.
Hey, big brother?
Shun didn't understand what he wanted. Then Kakeru continued to ask him in surprise about the mark on his neck. Shun was surprised to hear that coming from him, and answered that he had been wrestling at school.
I was caught in a strangle attack, but I won in the end, you know?
Kakeru listened with admiration to his brother's story, which he fabricated. The only thing that calmed Shun's heart was that his brother didn't care how hard it was, but decided to continue the lie so he wouldn't know everything to protect his little brother's smile. However, he didn't know someone was watching them. Koji and Daichi. Later, when Shun returned home, he found a note from his parents. To Shun, going out to buy something, left a crab stick. He went out running happily while holding food for the cat, wondering to himself if she would eat it. When he reached the river, he was amazed by what he saw. The cat was nowhere to be found. and as he stood there, he felt the group of bullies behind him. Here, Shigoku Kyo spoke up.
Hey, test subject A, come with us.
They took him to the thick and scary forest and told him they left her on that mountain. Kyo approached Shun and started to terrify him more and more, telling him there were wild boars and foxes.
If you don't find her quickly, I wonder if it'll get eaten.
Shun rushed towards the forest as soon as he heard his words. He was crying, his heart broken. Why did they? The bullies remained standing, watching him. Then, Hiro asked Kyo-chan about the reason for starting to bully Uruma. Kyo was surprised and asked if he didn't like that. Hiro replied with a negative and told him that he didn't mean it like that. Then he told him that they followed him because they found it fun for them too, but he was wondering why they chose him. Kyo looked at him and asked him,
What do you think is the most amazing thing they can do?
Everyone started to answer according to their preferences and what they liked, but Kyo didn't mean that. He told them that the answer is ending someone's life. His friends were surprised by his answer. He continued to explain to them that it's not simply murder.
To murder for someone's sake, to murder for yourself, murder for love. There's always a reason. A person who murders for no reason. I will be the first. A person who grew up in a loving and welcoming family, blessed with friends. No reason, no desire to murder like that. Finish someone's life, either directly or indirectly. Now that's decided first.
He saw someone as weak as Shun, so the optimal way for him was to indirectly murder him. Would it be risky or not? This is that kind of experiment for test subject A. How far must he be driven until he finishes his life? As Shun cried in the forest, unable to believe the level of cruelty they possessed, they were amazed by their friend Kyo and admired his way of thinking. Shun buried that kitten in the forest, which he found drowned in blood, and continued his way through the forest, sobbing and pondering how heartless they were. He was extremely sad because he couldn't even name it. He couldn't forget the image of the cat he was preoccupied with.
How could they do such a thing?
He was desperate to return home and see his family to recharge his sense of comfort. Suddenly, while lost in his thoughts, a bird startled him. He raised his head to the sky, but couldn't identify the location. And suddenly, he heard a sound among the trees. Then, someone came out directly in front of him. Shun panicked and fell to the ground. It was an old man with a scary look, carrying a gun in his hand. Suddenly, the old man exclaimed, "Shun?" Shun calmed down and focused on the person to discover it was his grandpa. Shun remained seated on the ground without a word, staring at his gun. When the grandpa noticed, he told him it was a hunting gun and that he was looking for wild boars. He came down on his knees and asked him, "Are you lost?" Shun's fear didn't go away. He replied with a yes. The grandpa understood that and told him it was dangerous to wander around. Then he said he would take him home. As dusk was falling, Shun's mother was outside, worriedly awaiting his return, then noticed him coming from afar and called out to him in surprise. Here, his grandpa gently nudged him and asked him to behave better. He was from his father's side of the family. He was living alone, and his family lived nearby to monitor his health, or so it seemed to him. His mother approached him and started scolding him, raising her voice and asking him why he was wandering with him. She angrily told him she always told him not to go near him. He and his brother were not allowed to see their gramps for a reason they didn't know. Shun headed towards his room, sat on the floor with his head down. He thought about everything that happened to him that day. Suddenly, Kakeru opened the door and asked him what was wrong. But Shun didn't want him to see him in that state. He turned away and told him that it was nothing. He didn't want to look at his brother's face while tearing up like this. Here, his brother approached him and hugged him, something Shun didn't expect. Then his brother told him, tears filling his eyes, that he always tries so hard. Shun's eyes widened upon hearing his brother's words, while Kakeru told him that he always tries so hard for his sake. He knew his older brother wasn't okay, so he tried to calm him down. Those words were enough to make Shun cry and express his true feelings in front of his younger brother for the first time. That day, I finally told my family about being bullied and was comforted by them. I didn't speak of their names since I didn't want to receive a half-hearted apology then. My parents moved quickly and I was transferred to another school. And now, it's been 1 month since I stopped going to that school. A few days later, the mother and brother, Kakeru, stepped out and informed Shun that they were going to pick up Dad. She asked him to take care of himself. On his way to the grocery store, he listened to his mother's words, and Kakeru bid farewell to his big bro with a big smile on his face. He stood there waving goodbye to them as they got into the car. Shun headed to the grocery store, bought what he needed, and returned with a bag full of items. Suddenly, he heard from behind.
Hey, I haven't seen you at school lately.
It was the group of bullies who were used to harassing him. They told him they knew that his mother usually picks up his father at this hour. Then, Daichi handed him the phone and told him it was a call from Kyo-chan. Shun took the phone, trembling, unaware of what awaited him. He put the phone to his ear.
Running away in the middle of the experiment is unforgivable, you know.
Kyo reminded him of the mountain their parents always passed by. He told him that an accident there wouldn't be strange. Shun was shocked to hear that. What? On the other hand, Kyo-chan and Hiro were on the mountain, overlooking the road, planning to finish the experiment after this, although the order for what he wanted to do had changed. After a while, Hiro started screaming, happiness evident on his face.
Look, his parents' car is coming. What are you going to do?
Yes. Suddenly, Kyo pushed Hiro from behind. Hiro wasn't expecting that. He fell from the top to the bottom and hit the ground. As he lifted his face, he found the car almost running him over. The mother noticed this quickly and turned the wheel into another direction, veering off the road. Hiro looked on in astonishment, blood streaming down from his eyes. The car plummeted downward and crashed into the trees. Kyo-chan descended, joy filling him.
Look, it worked, Hiro.
He went towards the car. Meanwhile, Hiro, bleeding, and happiness also engulfed him from the success of their plan. When Kakeru woke up, he was surprised to see his parents bleeding. Suddenly, he heard a noise, and when he turned around, he found Kyo looking at him with a big rock in his hand. He struck Kakeru on the head with it. Kakeru started bleeding and struggled to breathe. Here, Kyo gave him another blow to the head. Hiro watched him from a distance as the car appeared, as if it were going to catch fire. He lit a match and threw it on the car to intensify the fire. Kyo then said to Hiro,
Looks like it's begun.
His friend didn't understand what he meant by that. The flames grew more intense, and Kyo watched, licking his lips in enjoyment. After the incident, the doctor came to Shun and told him that they had managed to save his brother, but he had suffered serious burns and injuries. It's possible he may not wake up for the rest of his life. Shun watched his brother sleeping on the hospital bed through the glass, unable to believe what had happened. His parents' voices echoed in his mind, and the moments he spent with his family flashed in his head. It was a terrible and painful feeling. He felt like life was over, and began to wonder if he should die too. Then a man called out to him, telling him that he was his uncle, and asked if he had anywhere to go now on. Shun hadn't thought about it at all, so he was surprised by the question. Then the man suggested he go with them if he had nowhere else to go. Shun kept thinking, then told them he had a place to go. I do. The voice of his grandpa comes to his mind. He decided to go to his grandfather. Then he told them again that he had a place to stay. Shun packed his belongings from his home and headed to his grandfather's house, thanking him for allowing him to stay. The grandfather stood there, looking at him, then approached him and began to pat his head. I get lonely staying here anyway, so it's good to have you here, he said. Shun noticed 3 keys hanging nearby. That night, the weather was rainy and stormy. Shun remembered what his grandpa said. I'll send you home, but before that, let me put this away in the warehouse. Remembering what had happened before, and knowing the location of the warehouse, Shun headed there. He was completely soaked from the rain. He used the key he took and opened the door, entering the warehouse and using the flashlight to help him see. He easily found what he wanted and headed towards it. It was the grandfather's gun he had seen him use. Suddenly, lightning struck, illuminating the warehouse to reveal a large picture hanging on the wall. Shun was surprised. Yamakor. He noticed a sword on the table below the picture. Shun didn't understand what those things were doing there. Shun, what are you doing? The grandpa suddenly entered. He turned to him and was surprised to see him. The grandfather noticed he was holding the gun in his hand, so he asked him what he intended to do with it. Shun refused and turned in the opposite direction. The grandfather calmly asked him to give it to him, but Shun was adamant. No, I won't. This... Dad, Mom, Kakiru, I'll murder those bastards. I will murder them all. Shun spoke with a tone filled with anger and resentment, while his grandfather was shocked to learn the truth. They were murdered. Is this the truth? Shun informed him that those thugs had told him about their plans. His grandpa wanted to advise him to tell the police, but Shun interrupted him and told him he wouldn't tell them, and that no one would stop him from seeking revenge. The grandfather stood there, then told him that if he were him, he would eliminate them with a knife or something else. Then he asked him, Are you so hopeless that you'd have to use that? Shun turned to him and told him that he wasn't. The grandpa understands his grandson's feelings. Then he approached him and took the gun from him, telling him that he would be apprehended by the police before he could exact revenge. He then told him that if he sought revenge now, the feeling of guilt would haunt him for the rest of his life, even if it were for his family. Then the grandpa's tone changed and he said, Where's the thrill in that? These words were heavy to Shun. Here, the grandpa approached the hanging picture, speaking to him. Kure Sanchofu's 100th Special Squadron, also known as the Kitayama Corps. He told him it was a second Japanese service unit established in the Second War. During his time there, the ways of eliminating humans had been deeply ingrained in him. Then he turned to him after making his decision. Then I shall train you, to ensure he could give them the suffering they deserved and execute his revenge. Gramps' words were no mere lies. He was convinced that was the case because their eyes are the exact same as his. 4 years later, after Shun made his decision, he plotted his course and set his goal in this muddied world. The person who drifted around not knowing what he was no longer exists. And the world has always been divided into 2 parts. Good people, those who sow smiles for you, and villains who snatch them away. Here began Shun's life of revenge, after learning from his grandpa what he wanted, and becoming determined. Niseki High. It's a naturally colorful school commute, and unchanging despite the passage of time. The elegant school building. Participation in club activities is non-mandatory, because the school tradition places importance on taking pride in respecting the students' autonomy. Azuma Chizuru, a high school student who loves this school suddenly, as she dreams of being the hero of that morning. But her friend interrupts her with a greeting and surprises her with a blow to her head using her bag. The girl, named Monet, responded to the greeting and then thanked her for ruining her good mood. Monet was surprised by that and asked if she had gotten a boyfriend or something like that. Chizuru was surprised, and she told her that that wasn't true. Her friend started joking with her and told her that she really knows it's too early for her. While they were talking, their friends joined them, wondering what was happening because she seemed energetic. Monet replied that Shizuru says she wants a boyfriend. The two girls were excited to hear that and began cautioning her, asking her to be careful because there had been a suspect lately who was 2 meters tall. Shizuru imagined that and got scared, but she quickly realized that she hadn't said that in the first place and told them so. Here, her friend started thinking and asked her if that means she doesn't need a boyfriend. Shizuru blushed and hesitantly replied that she didn't mean that. The two girls got more excited and started screaming with joy, telling her they would talk about it again during break time. Shizuru tried to stop them, but she couldn't. In the middle of class, while the teacher was writing on the board, Shizuru was thinking about her friend's words about a boyfriend, putting her hand on her cheek. She didn't have the time to think about it in middle school because she was always absorbed in club activities. She felt annoyed with herself because she realized that she had never confessed to anyone before, and she wasn't confident she could have a proper romance. Here, the teacher called out to Uruma, surprising him as he wasn't paying attention. He responded, The teacher told him it wasn't and asked him how many times he did that. Then he asked him to solve a question, but he quickly changed his mind because he knew that he wouldn't know the answer. However, Shun came to the board, surprising the teacher. What? You can solve it? Shun remained silent for a moment, thinking about what he should write. Then he turned to him and told him that he didn't understand. The teacher asked him why he even came here then. Here, everyone in their class laughed at that, and in the midst of it, the teacher yelled, Return to your seat. Shun apologized and returned to his place, while Shizuru laughed softly, looking at him as he returned to his place. After that, it was break time, and her friends brought up the subject again, asking her if there was anyone she liked. She replied that there wasn't, and here her friend told her to choose one if she was being forced to choose. Shizuru was a little embarrassed, and then turned to Uruma, who was alone and getting ready to leave. She told them that maybe it was Uruma-kun. The girls were surprised by Shizuru's tastes, and here, Shizuru asked him to hold on and that she found him a bit interesting, but it's not love or anything like that. The girls screamed together and began to rejoice. However, Shizuru's tone changed, and she told them she was serious. Her friends knew that when they saw that her eyes weren't smiling. Then Monet asked her if she really found Uruma interesting. She told her that he is handsome, but slender and seems weak. Suddenly, they had a clatter, and Shizuru went to take a look and found that someone had bumped into Uruma. The guy apologized to him and asked him if he was hit. Uruma began to gather his things on the ground and told him that it was okay. The guy told him that he didn't see him, and suddenly kicked him again in his hand, causing the notebooks he had collected to fall. Shizuru couldn't hold herself back and shouted at him. He turned to her and looked at her with his menacing eyes. She froze in place and couldn't say a word. The guy went with his friend, leaving Uruma on the ground gathering his belongings, while he glared at them from behind. They were Kuga Daichi and Senkoji Katsumi from the bullying group who were responsible for his family's death. Monet was annoyed by Kuga's behavior and told them he was the worst. They were able to know his truth from that behavior. Monet told them that he had a scholarship for karate. While none of them understood why Senkoji was so aligned with him, it was possible that they were in the same middle school. Uruma carried his books and left the classroom, while Shizuru followed him with her eyes, feeling sorry for him. He headed to the staff room. I've come to collect the pack. He began carrying and transporting them. Here, Uruma and Shizuru's voice called after him and approached him. Introducing herself, she told him she was from the same class and started helping him carry the packs. She blushed a little after finishing her sentence, then said, It's fine, Azuma-san. It's better if you don't get involved with me, because Kuga might target you. Shizuru froze in place and couldn't find anything to say. Then she told him that he wouldn't find out about that. They took those packs over to the music room for preparation. They were very tired, and Shizuru couldn't believe that the teacher made them carry something this heavy alone. Here, Uruma looked at her and thanked her. Shizuru blushed and asked him to stop thanking her, because at the time, she couldn't do anything, and considered it as atonement for her own sake. Because Kuga was big and scary, Uruma laughed at her spontaneity and told her she was true. Here, she asked him if Kuga was in the same middle school as him, and he answered, Nope, our middle schools were different. We went to the same elementary school. Shizuru understood, and here, Uruma laughed again and told her that she was very kind. Then he reassured her and told her he would be fine, and that he didn't think about Kuga's actions. Shizuru was surprised by that, and how he did all of that and didn't care. Shizuru wanted to help in any way, so she suggested to him that she could inform the teachers herself. But Uruma turned around and looked at her with serious and intimidating looks. Shizuru froze in place and feared those looks. Here, he said to her again, "It's really fine." Shizuru understood his decision, but she wanted to tell him that she could help. However, Uruma interrupted her. "Azuma-san, please don't. It's more of a nuisance than Kuga." Shizuru stood alone in the room, trying to grasp what she had heard, as if her ears couldn't believe what they had heard. She couldn't get him. She was upset on his behalf because he didn't want to tell the teachers about anything either, and she accidentally ruined the sandwich she was carrying. Her friend told her that the sandwich she was carrying was in pain, but she couldn't forget what he had said to her. She was so affected that tears started streaming down her face. Monet knew very well that her friend had been too much unnecessary kindness and righteousness since way back, so she advised her to stop because things would get worse. Here, Shizuru told her that she was talking about the strangeness of Koga. The girls were having their meals while discussing the topic, unable to understand Uruma's behavior in that way. But Shizuru was sure that he was afraid of Kuga finding out if he had spoken to the teachers. Her friends agreed on her opinion. She then told Monet that she was right, and that he was handsome but slender and seemed weak. School time ended, and it was time to go home. Shizuru was heading to catch the bus, but unfortunately, the bus had left. There were still 30 minutes left until the next bus arrived, so she decided to walk to the station, instead of sitting and waiting. She was walking alone, and suddenly she noticed something. Uruma was walking on the same road. She remembered his looks and words that she couldn't forget, and her expression suddenly changed. She decided to continue walking behind him because it would be strange if she overtook him. She lowered her head and continued walking quietly behind him. When she looked forward, she was surprised to see that he had disappeared. She started looking around, wondering where he had gone, and suddenly, she was startled by a strange, huge man near her, who dragged her into the woods, and closed her mouth so no one could hear her. Suddenly, someone kicked the man in the face and threw him aside. The man fell to the ground with great force, then sat on the ground, holding the spot where he was hit. "Who are you?" Shizuru, tears streaming from her eyes, looked on in astonishment, because the person who saved her was her classmate, Uruma. The man felt angry. "Bastard, getting in my way!" He drew his dagger and attacked him, wanting to finish him off. Uruma didn't move away from him and stood his ground. With a swift movement, he stopped his attack and immobilized him, stepping on his face. He threw his weapon on the ground while Shizuru watched, trembling with fear. She was extremely frightened and tried to hold back her tears, but they eventually burst out. She began to cry aloud, thinking about how scared she had been. Uruma noticed her and went to ask her, "Are you all right, Azuma-san?" Shizuru calmed down a bit after realizing he was with her. Then, Uruma knelt down. "Azuma-san, I'm sorry, but I have a favor to ask of you." He told her to leave the matter of the man to him, and that he would take him to the police. Then he added, "What you saw here, please don't tell anyone." Shizuru was surprised by his request, which she couldn't understand the meaning of. But she thought that all she had to do was obey because he had done her a favor. Suddenly, she felt something on her shoulders. Uruma gave her his clothes because hers had been torn. Then he smiled at her. "See you, Azuma-san. See you tomorrow." She put on his jacket and boarded the train, lost in her thoughts. She pondered over who Uruma really was, and began to remember that her friend Monet's words about him, realizing she was wrong. She recalled the fight between Uruma and the man, something she had only seen in movies, and she couldn't forget the man's looks towards her. Out of fear, she began to thank God that someone had come and saved her. Suddenly, she remembered that she hadn't thanked Uruma for what he had done. On the other hand, Uruma had stabbed the man in the abdomen, making sure he was dead. Then he withdrew his hands from the body and raised them to the sky. "Grandpa, I can do it. I can finish humans." Single-minded desire. When Shun entered the kitchen, he found his grandfather cooking. As the grandpa cut the food, he asked his grandson, "Do you remember your promise to me?" So Shun behind him replied with,
"Let those who have changed go."
Then the grandpa murmured,
"That's right."
Then he added,
"People need a chance to change and be reborn."
Yet Shun's face turned to ice when he whispered,
4 years.
While pouring his drink, his face hardened when he counted.
Since they were killed, it's been 4 years.
As he poured his drink, Shun admitted that he had gone to a different middle school from the 5 of them. He wouldn't know the current them well. It was more than enough time for them to be reformed, and Shun's face fell when his grandpa told him 4 years was a long time. His grandpa, while preparing fish, said only humans could recognize and forgive mistakes, defining humanity. Yet the grandpa had another say. He started saying that if nothing had changed, as he cut the fish, he declared that that was no longer a person. Then he glanced at Shun with widened eyes and urged him to do his worst on his enemies. Shun agreed with his grandpa when he shared,
"Yeah, I pray they haven't changed."
After that, his grandpa asked him,
"Well then, who's first?"
Shun began thinking of them, from Madoka Hiro to Senkoji Katsumi, and the third was Ushiro Yuga. The fourth was Kuga Daiji, and the last, Shigoku Kyo, who was the real deal. He was the one who killed his parents. Who would be first would only be information privy to he and his grandfather. Later on, while Chizuru was walking to school thinking, her eyes widened when she looked ahead of her. She saw Shun walking in front of her. She began to remember what had happened to her before and how he rescued her, so she was determined to thank him. He glanced back when she called after him. Chizuru smiled at him, greeting him in the morning. Yet she started to stutter. Blushing, she thanked him for saving her earlier. Suddenly, Monet came smiling and greeting her out loud while they were stunned in their places, which made Chizuru grab her bag and snap at her to shut up, while her friend seemed happy with her doing. As she turned around angry, she told Shun to go somewhere else while he stood there with no clue. After, they were elsewhere. She handed him something. Shun held that tool in his hands while his eyes were wide, asking, "This? For me? What is this?" Yet Chizuru was happy to be giving that gift to him, explaining that it was Jibei Bird-chan from the Chibeta Animal series. Then she shared that it was a protective charm. Then she started to apologize for rambling so much, as he was thinking to himself, "She's got strange hobbies." His eyes widened in surprise when she told him he would be protected the next time by that Jibei bird. Feeling a bit shy, he thanked her, thinking maybe that he wouldn't get caught nodding off in class, while she simply told him not to sleep. Then she startled him when she wanted to mention something else. Blushing, she said there was one more thing she wanted to tell him. Her face turned red and her eyes were worried, thinking if she could even tell him. Suddenly, she brushed it off as nothing and turned away, leaving him confused. After she started to leave, his eyes widened in confusion. After she left, he figured it was fine if she couldn't tell him what bothered her. As he stood there, 2 other students passed by. He glanced at them. He eyed Senkoji Katsumi, 15 years old, blood type A, has excellent grades, bad at sports. He's an only child from a well-off family, with both parents alive. Despite being popular with girls, there's no gossip about him. He remembered that in 4th grade in elementary school, he was friends with him. It started due to a seat change. He became seated next to him, and Shun was so happy when Senkoji talked to him. Though we are reminded that he's not so well off, as he plants an insect in his gun. Shun's face was white from terror, and Senkoji fired at him. Shun knew that he had made a mistake when he befriended him. Senkoji was taken by them, and the one who killed that cat was probably him. The main cause of all of that was him. As Shun sat in his class watching him talk with another student, he was thinking. His mind raced with, the problem is whether Senkoji has had a change of heart or not. There was no way he could know, but he had to confirm, due to the promise he made to his grandpa. So he started to think of a way he could confirm if he had really changed. He noticed that 2 weeks had passed since the entrance ceremony, yet there were no suspicious moves about that Senkoji. Yet, he remarked that even when he got close to him, that didn't spark anything. so he had to do something else. His eyebrow frowned disappointment in himself, thinking to himself,
Grandpa, I've only learned the ways to kill.
Suddenly, someone called after him. Senkoji walked toward Shun, asking,
Do you remember me?
At that moment, Shun's eyes widened in shock. Yet Senkoji grabbed Shun's hands, happy that he knew him because it had been a long time. However, Shun didn't forget anything Senkoji used to do to him. And Senkoji's smile was so wide and his eyes closed, but Shun didn't trust him. He suspected him. Then Senkoji started to stutter, thinking he wanted to ask him something, feeling shy. So he glanced at him, asking,
Next Sunday, would you like to hang out with me?
Afterward, Shun was shocked, at a loss for words at Senkoji's question. Later, on that day, as they walked, someone shared that they were so glad. It was Senkoji, walking with Shun, murmuring,
I thought you wouldn't come.
Senkoji looked at him surprised when Shun asked him,
Why did you want to hang out with me?
Feeling a bit shy, he figured since they went to the same school, he wanted to get along with him, which made Shun's eyes soften at Senkoji's declaration. Shun and Senkoji had played when they were young, and they had a history, and he didn't know if he should forget about it. As they walked, Shun was thinking about everything. Finally, he figured that whatever he was plotting, he wouldn't overlook his evil. Then, Senkoji stopped and pointed at a commemoration. He asked if they should take one. So they went and took a pic there. Shun stood there, surprised by Senkoji's joy in taking those pictures, saying,
I'm gonna paste it on my phone.
Later, he handed him one of those pictures. Then he grabbed his arm and started to joke with him, taking them to their next destination. A clothing store, Solange Bencard, was in front of them. Shun's eyes widened when Senkoji wore a sweatshirt. He proceeded to give him a shirt, with plenty of muscles to show off his masculinity. Following, Senkoji grabbed him and darted away with huge smiles. Yet, Shun sensed something weird about him. When they entered that cafe, Shun sensed that something was strange as he gazed at the people. He watched several couples sitting there having a good time, and others feeding each other. After that, he went inside and sat down, while Senkoji was standing opposite to him. But then, he came near him and apologized as he pulled his chair next to Shun. When Senkoji sat beside Shun, he was stunned by that move. Then he smiled at Shun, saying,
It's been a while since I've had so much fun.
And finally, Shun smiled back at him. After watching Senkoji's actions, Shun gathered something about him. Facing him, he was confused about what feelings Senkoji was having. As he was sniffing his nose, his eyes were watering. Did he know those feelings weren't malice from him? His gaze was worried because he recognized it. Those were tears coming down Senkoji's eyes. Shun knew Senkoji was friendly because he was crying in front of him. Quickly, he asked, worried, Hey, what's wrong? Senkoji said he was sorry while wiping away his tears. He told Shun he felt alone having fun and noticed Shun seemed mentally absent. Then he whispered, No, pardon me. Senkoji smiled softly, admitting it was wrong of him to be wishing for something from Shun. Yet Shun was surprised that he thought that. Shun was caught thinking to himself, thinking maybe Senkoji felt regret from the past, which made him question himself if he had changed for real. And after that day, Senkoji often came to talk with Shun. Later on, Shun was walking. As he kept walking, he heard someone talking. He peeked around to see Kuga leaning against some wall, looking down at Senkoji, asking him, Lately you've been hanging around Dudama. Why? When Shun saw them, he wondered what they were talking about. Following, Kuga's eyes narrowed when he asked Senkoji, What are you trying to pull? Yet Senkoji seemed off when he glanced back, being at a loss for words. His eyes watched when he admitted,
I have something I regret.
At that moment, Shun heard his admission of feeling guilty for something in front of Senkoji. Kuga smirked, mocking. What's that? However, Senkoji didn't tell him a thing. Instead, he told them they should head back. After that, Shun stood there, lost in his hands. He had a moment of realization when he guessed the reason behind Senkoji's regret. Later on, as the day passed. As Senkoji walked beside Shun, he apologized for making him come with him, although it was the opposite direction of his home. Yet Shun didn't mind. Senkoji wanted to show him something. Following him, Senkoji showed him the way. Shun stared at him in confusion, while Senkoji turned back to look at him. Then he sat on the ground. Shun asked him, "In you wanting to get along with me, there is one thing that's been on my mind." Shun gazed at him, worried when he uttered, "When we were in elementary school, what you did to me." As Senkoji looked up at Shun, he continued his question. "You do remember, right?" Standing over him, Shun found it strange they had a relationship without discussing their past. While Senkoji's hand clenched, Shun wondered to himself, what are Senkoji-kun's thoughts about this? Suddenly, Senkoji put his head on the ground, asking for Shun's forgiveness, crying out loud.
"I'm terribly sorry."
He was crying and admitting to him.
"I wanted to apologize many times, but I was scared."
Shun's eyes widened in total surprise, while Senkoji kept saying,
"I thought that it would be nice if we could continue to pass time like this."
Shun's eyes softened, taking pity on him. Yet he remembered Senkoji's shitty behavior when they were young. At that moment, a cat meowed from behind them. After that, the cat started to walk away. Following her, Senkoji went in her direction, murmuring that he was looking for her. Not realizing that there was a car coming his way, he wanted to grab the cat. Suddenly, the driver honked his car at him. Senkoji, realizing this, grabbed that cat and launched himself to the side while saving her. The car rushed past him, almost crushing him. Shun's eyes bulged upon seeing him do that. And Senkoji kept holding the cat while kneeling on the road as the car drove away. His eyes were teary as he saw that the cat was fine. Shun was shocked to see Senkoji risk his life to save a kitten. He knew Senkoji had been reformed. Yet, Senkoji's face changed when he whispered, "It's now." Suddenly, Asuma came and held Shun from the back. As he glanced back at her, he realized he was being restricted by her. The moment he turned around to see her, Senkoji grabbed a rock from behind him, as he was about to hit him with it. Some cabins in the woods. Shun was tied to a chair with ropes. He woke up exhausted, with slashes on his face. Later, Senkoji grinned like a maniac, holding the cat, and asked,
Have you woken up?
As Shun started to gain consciousness, he glanced to his side when he heard someone sobbing. His eyes bulged when he saw Azuma-san tied up next to him too. Azuma-san was crying so much. Shun was stunned when Senkoji stood near him, sneering.
I've always regretted this.
He mentions the time of elementary school. Shun faces pure shock. Finally, the evil Senkoji admitted that he wasn't able to take him down. That was his regret. Next, he held out that cat, saying that he thought it belonged to Shigoku. He mentioned he was about to give up. Yet Shun remained unfazed, and the psycho warned him that once he arrived, he wouldn't surrender his target. Senkoji's eyes darkened when he started to strangle the cat. Tied up, Shun's eyes narrowed at Senkoji, when he finally confessed that he would never give up his prey to anyone else. Uruma's dissection. Pure love. Shun and Azuma were both tied up. As Shun woke up, he was confused about his location. That evil Senkoji's head was bloody. Then he remembered that he had deceived him earlier, yet something was off. He glanced at Azuma, not understanding why she was there too, so he suspected that she was his accomplice in his kidnapping. While he was eyeing her, she blurted out that she was sorry. Azuma was sobbing, her words stuttering as she struggled to explain the situation to Shun. Shun's head snapped up when she mentioned that time. Senkoji explained by showing his phone, saying,
It's about this.
Shun's eyes bulged when Senkoji held out his phone to him, saying that he passed by confidently. He showed him the scene where Azuma was being taken down by the thug who almost killed her. Shun was stunned. Yet Senkoji was happy, watching that video, saying it was so lovely that he came to her rescue. Then he teased.
Well, things have turned out like this.
While Shun was tied up, Senkoji was in the dark about why Shun was loving that, but he made sure he couldn't move in that case. As Shun pulled those ropes, he noticed something. These ropes were different from the ones he had learned from his gramps. Next, Senkoji smiled like a true villain, murmuring,
It's Torinawa, otherwise known as Killer of Escapees.
He explained to Shun about the Edo period and how people invented binding methods to prevent criminals from escaping. No one had ever escaped the Torinawa. Senkoji was so excited that Shun couldn't get out of it. So Shun asked him,
Why did you go so far?
Senkoji simply said,
For prudence.
Next, he wanted to add something else. He smirked, warning Shun.
Just in case anything happens, with the push of a button, I arranged for this place to blow up.
Azuma was scared, her face white. However, Shun recognized the smell in this place. Yet, that evil Senkoji looked at the device, admitting that with the press of the button, the electricity would run and the bottles of kerosene he had scattered around the room would ignite. He almost pushed that button in his hands. Then he smirked at them. All of a sudden, he started laughing out loud like a maniac. Finally, he shouted.
Finally, Uruma-kun! With these hands I can...
Then he added,
My most beloved person.
Out of nowhere, her eyes bulged and Senkoji punched Shun in his face. Before he could land the second punch, she started screaming at him to stop. Yet Senkoji was thriving on it. He laughed.
Stop! We're just starting.
He punched him again, proudly admitting that he liked to torment him just to see his agonized expressions. Before he could land his next punch, he shouted.
The only way I'll stop is when Uruma-kun dies!
In a moment, Azuma intervened and pushed herself on his way to block his punch. When she landed on the ground, she asked him if Shun was his beloved person. Then why would he do all of this? They both looked down at her when she shared that at this rate, Uruma would be gone. So Shun reassured her, saying,
It's alright, Azuma-san.
His face fell when he continued saying that it was nothing to worry about. Seizing the chance, Senkoji smiled, hinting at mischief. So he turned around and went to grab something. Shun's eyes widened when he saw the dead cat's back had a nail in it. Then the realization hit him, recognizing his nail gun. After that, Senkoji held out the tool, amazed by its function. So he turned and pointed the tool at Azuma. His eyes were lifeless when he snapped.
I did tell you to please stay still, right?
He fired the nail gun at her, yet the nail was near her face within inches. Afterward, he began to fire again at her while she was screaming, scared. Yet he seemed bored by it. And after a while, as she was crying for her life, Senkoji groaned that her face was not exciting enough. After that, he started explaining that he found that cat whose name was Mita in a basement. Senkoji began speaking in a maniacal tone about his twisted thoughts and about how he enjoyed tormenting his loved ones and the things he loved, which was the reason he killed the little cat. Azuma couldn't bear his words and became emotional, telling him it was because he truly didn't like it. He pointed the gun at her and said,
No! It's because I truly like it I'm able to savor these feelings.
Then he fired near her and told her that putting someone you love in a miserable situation is almost like a forbidden love, or like an innocent boy discovering life. He taunted her triumphantly.
You can taste the best sense of immorality.
Senkoji started laughing at her and relished the sight of Azuma lying on the ground. Shun realized he was insane. Azuma cried out from what had happened to her and begged him not to look at her, while Senkoji told Shun that this gratification, that Shigoku-san made him realize it. Shun listened to him, while Senkoji was excited, wanting to see the expressions Shun would make. Shun realized he was wrong. Their evil is bottomless. Senkoji shot him, once in his foot. Then he went into a fit of laughter, asking him,
Does it hurt? Is it painful?
He was extremely excited and told him he was going to shoot him twice now. He gestured with his weapon, shouting,
More! More!
He began shooting him wildly all over his body until Azuma screamed and asked him to stop. Senkoji looked like a psychiatric patient as he screamed.
Your agonized and twisted expression!
Though Shun never made a sound, he remained calm. Even though he was bleeding everywhere, he showed no anguish on his face. Because he was focused on freeing his hands from behind. Suddenly, Senkoji was surprised.
Why? The color of your face didn't even...
Azuma also turned in surprise, and here, Shun smiled and said,
I've gotten used to it. This level of pain for 4 years thanks to you guys.
Then he asked him if he intended to use the tools forever, then told him if he continued at this level, his eyes wouldn't blink until he died. Then Shun asked him if he was afraid to touch a dead man's body, and if that's why he always uses those tools. Then he told him that he only uses his hands to kill bugs and cats. Senkoji threw the key away from his hand.
Oh, I understand.
He approached him.
If you go so far to say that...
Shun glanced at the key on the ground. And here, Senkoji approached him, grabbed him by the neck, and began choking him, telling him that he would end him with his own hands. Azuma screamed from there, wanting to stop him. She knew that at this rate, Uruma-kun would die. Senkoji was enjoying choking him, asking him,
How is it? My strangling? Is it to your satisfaction?
Shun was choking, and then said,
I've been waiting for this time.
Then he released his grip from the rope. He hit Senkoji in his neck, pushing him away, leaving Azuma astonished by this unexpected move. Shun turned and picked up the switch, remembering what Senkoji had said to him. Senkoji couldn't believe what had happened and asked him,
How did you get out of...
Shun lifted the sleeve on his hand and told him that there are 68 joints in the human body, and that he can control them freely. Almost all of them. He then told him that the way he strangled him was not good, that he should put his thumb on the windpipe and his index finger on the carotid artery and the middle finger on the jugular vein. That he jumped on him and choked him. Like this. Then he began to press on him forcefully until he lost consciousness. Well, if it continued for 3 or 5 minutes, it would affect the cortex of the brain. And from 7 to 10 minutes, it would cause damage to the brain stem, then death. But Shun didn't intend to let him die. And here, he turned back to find Azuma sitting, tears filling her eyes. Azuma-san. After a moment, Senkoji began to regain consciousness.
Chains? What on earth?
Shun asked him.
You're awake?
Shun noticed that his prey had awakened, so he approached him, looking at him with his emotionless eyes, surprising Senkoji.
Uruma-kun?
Uruma greeted him. It began to clap and congratulate him because he was the first. Senkoji didn't understand what he meant.
The first?
Shun confirmed that and welcomed him to the beginning of the end. The first. Senkoji was hanging by chains while Shun was preparing something. He was drenched in sweat. The room felt stiflingly warm. Vinyl was stretched across one side of the wall, and there was a table and a mirror. And he saw a peeler. His eyes popped. He was lost in confusion. Senkoji wasn't aware of what was awaiting him. Next, Shun approached him and started telling him what he saw in a film. He kept informing him about what he found out. Finally, he looked him dead in the eyes and told him that cleaning up would be easy. Yet Senkoji had no clue what Shun was talking about. His eyes widened in sheer, paralyzing horror. In front of him, Shun raised his gun, locking eyes with him, and hissed, "I looked for it." Then, with chilling certainty, he added, "An air gun, on the same model that you used." He recalled the haunting memories of Senkoji's relentless torment from years past. Back then, when Senkoji chained up Shun and started shooting at him, behind him was that group of bullies mocking him. After so many missed shots, Senkoji decided to shoot while he was closer. As Senkoji stood in front of the terrorized Shun, he pointed the gun at his stomach and whispered,
We'll get to see your agonized expression too.
Next, he pulled the trigger and shot Shun dead in his stomach. Shun screamed in agony from the shot, while after that Psycho Senkoji, he was smiling, enjoying this. After that, he lifted his airgun and pointed it at Shun's widened eyes, scaring him in the present moment. As Shun held his gun up to Senkoji, he confessed to him. The place where you shot really hurt. So Shun pulled up his shirt, showing him the scars that were left in his flesh. Senkoji's eyes widened in the horror he caused Shun, muttering,
Sorry.
Yet Shun lifted his gun at Senkoji's eyes, saying, I wonder how much it'll hurt if I shot your eyeball. Shun gazed at him with no mercy, wondering if he should do it. At that moment, Senkoji shouted, crying,
I had no choice!
He lowered his face, crying,
I had no choice but to obey Kyo-san. I was afraid.
However, Shun didn't fall for his cries, and Senkoji informed him that it was an experiment to see how far he had to commit suicide. After that, Shun sighted him. Yet Senkoji was all tears, uttering,
Now that I think of it, I might have been brainwashed.
While crying, Senkoji confessed
I was always Kyo-san's puppet.
that he was so weak, he regretted it. Then he lifted his head up, smiling and begging,
Please, take me to the police. I'll testify for everything.
Yet Shun turned around laughing at the chained up Senkoji, telling him, Tell me what you really think, Senkoji-kun. He glanced back at him with a piercing look, telling him that he was sweating profusely. But Senkoji thought that it was because of the hot room. However, Shun was heading back, leaving him hanging in there, while Senkoji was stuttering. Shun gripped the mirror on the wall. He teased, Oh, you feel hot, huh? Behind him, Senkoji's anxiety was palpable. He stammered.
What does that mean?
With the mirror in hand, Shun glanced at his reflection as he responded. It's the reaction to your nerves being oversensitized, perhaps. The talk of the Great War flooded his mind. He remembered his gramps when he informed him that among the enemies, there were some who received special training to endure torture so they didn't break easily. So the Kitayama Corps had a method they used. His gramps told him it was called peeling. That peeler was on the ground. There was a bit of blood in it. Senkoji looked at it with sweating buckets. Senkoji trembled in terror. His voice quivered as he asked,
What are you planning to do with that peeler?
Shun's face grew dark as he stated, No, that's already been used. At Shun's concession, Senkoji's eyes widened, confused. Senkoji stopped, stunned, when he saw himself in that mirror that Shun held in front of him. He had already peeled Senkoji's chests and legs. Then he screamed in terror, consumed by fear. Shun's gramps filled him in on the method they used back then that would hurt his enemies. He gave him the most horrifying way to hurt their enemies. If they felt like they were being scorched by the burner, then that should be about the time the anesthesia wore off. Shun's eyes were soulless when he lifted his finger to touch Senkoji's body. Next, he touched Senkoji's abs. In an instant, Senkoji screamed from the pain. At that moment, he knew he would die from that. He cried out, tears streaming down his face.
I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I'm sorry!
His apologies were directed at Shun. His whole body trembled when he said,
Please forgive me already.
Though Shun didn't care, he lifted the airgun and pointed it at him. Next, he pointed at his stomach while Senkoji was apologizing to spare his life. And then, Senkoji's eyes bulged, imagining the pain he would feel if Shun used that gun. A shot rang out with a bang. Shun had used that airgun and shot him, making Senkoji's watch with wide eyes. Then, his mouth filled with vomit. After that, he started to gasp for air. Suddenly, Senkoji erupted, barking.
It's all your fault!
He blamed him for rejecting him back then. Then he smiled, shouting,
Shikoku Kyo acknowledged me. She taught me joy.
In a flashback, she mentioned trying to give that insect a name and raising it. and killing it after adoring it. And the next thing was hurting Shun. In that moment, Senkoji barked and laughed like a maniac, shouting, "More! More! I wanted to see more of your suffering figure!" Then, he started making fun of Shun's dead family and his little brother. He lost his mind, shouting out loud, "I bet your face at that time will be a sight to behold!" However, Shun just stood there speechless. Then he whispered, "Finally." Shun pointed his gun at that psycho. He sighed. "Finally, you spoke your true thoughts." Shun stood there, just watching as Senkoji's body suffered from his shot. Then he started to bleed onto the floor. Senkoji's mouth was full and his face slacked back, unmoving. Shun's face, though, was stoic as he watched him. As he waited, Senkoji's chained-up body stopped moving at all. Later on, that wooden cabin in the forest. Ozma waited inside, worried. Then she heard some noise. She saw Shun coming in. Her eyes lighted up happy when she saw him alive, and then she asked him about Senkoji. At the mention of his name, Shun's face darkened. As he stood there, he warned her, "This time, it's not a promise, it's a coercion. Choose." He looked down at her and said, "Be silent, but what happened here?" Or, he finished with saying, "Die." Ozma's face fell. Later that night, Shun was walking. As he got into that room, he passed out onto the floor. As he lay on the floor, his gramps called after him. He crouched down and held him in his arms. Shun whispered, "I did it. Senkoji." Then he passed out in his arms. Gramps looked at him, understanding what he had meant. Then he repeated it. Then he picked him up, murmuring, "Leave the cleaning up to me." The following day, at their school, it seemed that Senkoji didn't return home since Friday last week. One of the school workers was worried about him, so he asked them if anyone knew anything about him, and if so, they should tell the teachers. All of the school students were surprised by that news. Then Kugo asked, "What happened to him?" His classmate Monet wondered too about it while looking at Chizuru. Yet Chizuru didn't answer her, only looking worried. She was gazing at something. She was looking at the empty table in her class. In the hospital, inside it, the nurses walked. Inside one of the rooms, the machine indicated that someone was still alive. Shun sat beside his unconscious brother, saying, "It's been a while, right?" Shun's voice broke as he whispered to his injured brother, "Kakeru?" Shun sat there, lost in thought. He started talking to him about the weather. Next, he smiled when he told him he had brought the azaleas that were so beautiful. Then he asked him, "We often used to suck the nectar out, right?" Though, Kakeru was not responding to him. After that, Shun's face fell, thinking to himself, "Kakeru, when will you wake up?" He stayed there, beside his brother. He wondered if Kakeru would wake up, and if he would wait for him. Then he told him that there were only 4 left. Shun looked devastated, thinking. At the Hashira police station, inside of it there was a crime division department. The police patrol officer, Asako, barged in smiling and called after Anzai. As she entered, she found 2 men who told her that Anzai was in the break room. So she turned around to leave when one of them teased her for being a weirdo like him. She was pissed when he continued mocking. "Won't your promotion be delayed?" After that, she left the room, furious. While she was walking, she almost cried from the frustration. Then she entered another room and found Anzai. She started to run towards him, pissed. Then she stood arguing with him. Yet the police sergeant, Anzai Zenichi, smirked at her, saying he was absorbing some caffeine. As he drank from those way too many cans, Asako snapped at him angrily. Then she told him that there was another missing person. As he listened to her, she informed him that his name was Senkoji Katsumi, a high schooler at Meiseki. Then he pulled something out of his suit. He took out a small notebook from his jacket. and he began to flip through its pages. He retrieved the list of Shun's classmates from the time. Aftermath. Shun sat on his desk in his room. He was thinking of something. In front of him was a photo of Senkoji with a big X on it. While gazing at that photo, his face darkened, thinking of the murder he had performed. Yet he was determined that the next time, he wouldn't be so neglectful as he had been with Senkoji. He wanted to make sure he was prepared for everything. And if they didn't have a heart, that he would definitely take them down. Next, his eyes narrowed when he chose his next target. He was after Ushiro Yuga. Later on, at a karaoke studio, there were 3 doors in that hall, while the rest of the people who sat there were drinking and smoking. One of the girls there beamed, hearts twinkling in her eyes as she fed someone nearby. Yuga was there in the group, enjoying his night. Surrounded by women, a phone on the table beeped, while one of the girls held out the microphone, telling him to sing next. He smirked, saying,
Sorry, it's from a customer.
So he got out of the room to use his phone. He pulled his phone when a text came through about one customer that day. At 18 o'clock, they asked if they could order 15. As he held his phone, he replied at them, agreeing to meet in front of the station. Then he clicked on some button and asked some other group if they could go at 18 o'clock, but they couldn't. While standing outside, a girl came out of the door saying that she could go. So he said,
Thanks, I'm saved.
Next, Hana came looking for him. She told him she wanted to stop selling because she had saved enough for her university. Her eyes were pleading as she expressed her gratitude to him, so he just smiled softly at her and Hana blushed. Yet he turned around and walked, asking her to talk outside properly, so they headed out. As they walked, she sensed something was off, so she asked about that desolate location. All of a sudden, he yanked her by her hands. She was stunned by that sudden reaction. His eyes bulged while screaming at her.
You want to stop forever?
Still hurting her, he snapped.
To be precise, you're saying that you don't need me?
Following, he lightened up his lighter. The moment he said,
To the tongue that is saying strange things, it's better to burn it.
Her eyes bulged in horror to what he was about to do. Next, he burned her tongue, and she started screaming in pain, yet her cries didn't stop him. He was so pissed, he wanted an out just like that. Then his eyes widened. He didn't give a damn if she went to university or not. Then he threatened,
From now on, come when I tell you to come, and go when I tell you to go.
Still holding her tongue, he groaned.
Understood.
All she could do was look at him, horrified. After that, he dropped his hands away from her, while she covered her mouth, crying. He then apologized to her. Suddenly, he hugged her, saying,
I need you.
While hugging her, he told her that he couldn't handle her disappearance. So, manipulated into saying so, she apologized too. Afterward, he sighed.
Thank goodness.
He proceeded to gaze at her like a maniac, and told her if anyone wanted to leave, she should stop them. Next, his phone beeped again. As he checked his phone, he smiled, saying,
Oh, Hana, work came in quickly.
Shigoko Kyo asked him to meet up under the bridge at 18 o'clock. After he read it, his face turned serious, thinking about Kyo. Ushiro Yuga, 15 years old. Shun uncovered Yuga's involvement in prostitution, drug trafficking, and attendance at a private school, alongside his reckless friends. After he knew all that, he figured he could take him down, no sweat. Looking at his pic, he knew that he was still wicked, just like before. He was plotting on how to catch him, despite lacking any connections. Then he spun around as the doorbell chimed. So, he got up and went to open the door. Next, he opened the door in front of his face. It was Anzai the detective, and behind him was Ota from the same station. After they introduced themselves, Shun's eyes widened in recognition. After he got out, they all stood outside, while Anzai murmured, It's been since that case. 4 years ago, huh? As Anzai looked at him carefully, he sensed something. He remembered the younger version of Shun back then, and at that moment was very different. That detective could feel Shun tensing up. Following, Shun wondered if he had come to ask more questions about that time, so Anzai said, It's not about that case, but... However, he caught Shun off guard when he asked him directly. Shun-kun, do you know about what happened to Senkoji-kun? His question made Ota widen in surprise, asking him to hold on. Then he gazed up at him, asking, "Senkoji-kun? What is this about?" Hanzo grinned, dropping the intel that Senkoji vanished, hinting Shun was in the mix. So Shun told him that they were classmates, so they talked. Then Anzo thought about it. It was strange. But then, he head-on asked him, "Why were you being good friends with the kid that bullied you?" However, Shun looked at him and muttered, "I said," his voice cracked with anger, "that I wasn't being bullied." Then he added, "Didn't I say the same thing 4 years ago?" Anzo grinned, eyeing him suspiciously, and said, "Oh, that's right." While Uta was surprised about the bullying case, while Shun looked at him. Anzai wanted to add one thing. Uta's eyes widened, and Shun stared at Anzai, asking what he would do if his parents were murdered and his brother was left in that state. At that moment, Uta started to sweat. Yet the detective smiled at him and repeated if it was him. Then he looked at him and said, "What would you do?" They stood there, waiting for him to answer. Finally, Shun looked at them with a chilling intensity and growled, "I'd take them down." His answer stunned them. The Shun's eyes were devoid of emotions. Even the detective noticed it. So Anzai sensed that Shun was a different guy than before. He watched him carefully. He knew his words weren't in vain. At that moment, his grandpa intervened, urging them to drop the topic. Standing beside Shun, he urged them to understand that Shun had moved on and suggested that they should leave. After that, the detective smiled and said that they would go. So he turned and went on his way, while Uta ran to catch up with him. After they left, Shun and his grandpa knew the officer was into something. They knew he was suspicious. It made Shun think, if only there was no evidence left behind, it would be great. Under some bridge was a group of people. One of them held up some feathers. Too many feathers were there, and the crow was crowing out loud from the pain. Kyo was torturing that crow, while her gang was smiling beside her. Yuga was there, and Madoka and Kuga too, and Kyo met with all of them. Then he told them Senkoji had disappeared. While they stood there thinking, Yuga told them it was impossible. They couldn't believe how he could just be gone without a report. Then Yuga glanced back at Kuga and asked, "Kuga, did you contact him?" Kuga told him it went to a voicemail. Following that, Kyo presented 3 possibilities. First, he was alive, but chose not to contact them. Second, he was alive but unable to contact them. Then, third, he might be dead. They stared at her in utter shock. Kuga was thinking of something. Next, he told them earlier when he had met them in Senkoji, they had some thoughts about Shun from 4 years ago. Upon hearing Shun's name, Kyo's eyes widened, and Yugo shot her a look of confusion. She was thinking about Shun. While Yugo and Madoka were arguing about him, Kyo stood there, holding the crow while they bickered. Then she smiled, saying that it was number 3. After that, she turned and walked away, telling them they were breaking up for that day. As she walked away, they called after her. Shigoko Kyo was bored because she knew that she was completely flawless. As she walked, she dropped that dead crow onto the ground. That kind of person remembered the only time she lost an easy game. While she remembered Shun, everything connected. She smiled like a psycho, the only one who grasped the situation. Shigoko Kyo. Several days later, somewhere, 3 figures were standing close. They were chatting and smoking. As the guy smoked, he saw some light from afar. As Yugo pulled over with his bike, there was someone else behind him when they greeted him. Then one of the 3 guys asked, "Who's that?" "The kid behind you." After that, he went on to inform them. "She just started working. Miki introduced her." After the girl came, they looked her up and down and asked for her name. With innocence in her gaze, she introduced herself as Azuma Chizuru. In front of the gang, Azuma stood, clutching her bag tightly. Once again, classmate Azuma-san slipped in like a poisonous fang. Favorite. After deciding who the next person would be, Shun stood in front of Teisei Academy, the private school where Ushiro attends high school. Shun was aware that the police were on high alert, so to stay safe, he decided to check on their movements. Ushiro Yuga, mother and son household, once known as a playboy in elementary school. After meeting Shigoku, he became enlightened and is now running a prostitution service. However, Shun didn't understand why someone like Ushiro would choose a prep school. He was curious to hear the rumors about him among his peers. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to stop people around him and then ask them about Ushiro. Everyone gave positive responses, saying he is cool, a kind boy, and someone who achieved excellent grades. However, the last person told him that they had been together since middle school, and that he had changed since then, becoming settled. Shun felt that his efforts were futile because everyone agreed that he was kind, and not the Ushiro he knew. But the girl interrupted him, and told him that since that incident, he had been extremely discouraged and stopped coming to school. Shun was surprised by her words. That incident? Sadness was evident in the girl's eyes. As she mentioned the missing girl, Sakuraba Karen, who was 15 years old. They had placed missing person posters everywhere to find her. She told him that Sakuraba was Ushiro's girlfriend, whom he started dating since the 3rd year of middle school. She was credited with changing Ushiro because of her high morals. And the reason Ushiro chose Teisei was because it was Karen's first choice. She sadly told him that the girl suddenly disappeared a few months after returning to school. She was walking down the hallway and noticed inside that she was sitting alone, looking sad. She called out to her to ask what had happened, but Karen didn't answer her and seemed strange. The girl wondered about that, and here her companions called her to hurry because she was late for them. She apologized to Karen and went. And that was the last time she saw Sakuraba Karen. The next day, a report was filed about a missing person who was not found, sparking speculation about whether she committed suicide or something supernatural occurred. This had an impact on Ushiro, who appeared stressed and had been absent from school since then. This clarified the situation for Shun, revealing the reason for his return to criminal activities. Holding his phone, Shun looked at a picture of Sakuraba Karen, contemplating that she might hold the key to everything. In a vacant and dark place, beneath the stairs, there was a door with a closed sign hanging on it. However, inside, it was lively and filled with girls. Shizuru sat there alone, wondering about the place filled with the people of the same age, who seemed terrifying. Her friend Miki was also there. The reason for Shizuru's presence being that Miki had asked for help with her part-time job. Shizuru remained pondering about the nature of the job. Then, a man approached her.
Hey, you're Chizuru-chan. Having fun?
Chizuru was puzzled by the man, and didn't know who he was. He asked her if he could sit, then sat directly beside her and embraced her with his arm. Getting too close for comfort, he said,
You know, for us, we can freely have fun while standing by.
Chizuru didn't understand what he was talking about, and was disturbed by his closeness. Miki intervened and stopped Kawashima, who was trying to harass Chizuru. She was extremely angry, and went to warn Chizuru about him, telling her that he was a bad person who only thought about perverse things. Chizuru was surprised that someone like him was in that place, and asked about the nature of this part-time job. Miki's expression changed, and in a sad tone, she apologized to her friend, then told her that she was a prostitute. Chizuru couldn't believe what she had heard, and remained frozen in place. Miki began to explain to her that Kawashima arranges girls, and that her being there alone was enough. She told her that she could leave soon. Amid Chizuru's shock, Miki was at a loss for what to do. Then she started to cry and told her she wanted to make Yuga happy. Chizuru couldn't believe what she was hearing, especially when she was talking about someone she knew. Miki was extremely sad and continued, telling her he thought he would be happy if she brought more girls. She warned her not to aim at him. Chizuru was puzzled by her friend's words and asked what she meant. But Miki changed the subject, gave her clothes, and asked her to wear them. After asking her to change, she goes to the bathroom. Chizuru remained looking at herself in the mirror for a while, admiring her appearance in the clothes. Then suddenly, she realized her foolish behavior and began to blame herself, thinking she needed to leave quickly. She was anxious, thinking about what to do with her friend Miki, who had fallen in love with Ushiro. Then, suddenly, the door opened, and Kawashima grabbed her from behind.
Chizuru-chan.
She wished for Shun to come and rescue her. And suddenly, someone broke the door and stormed into the place with force. She thought it was him, but as soon as that harasser turned around, he received a kick to the face and was pushed to the ground. Then he said, Lately, your bad behavior has been standing out, Kawashima. He grabbed him by the hair and pulled him up, telling him he had warned him not to lay a finger on the merchandise. Kawashima started crying and begged for forgiveness.
My bad. I'm sorry, Yuga.
Then he asked him to go home. Afterward, he asked if she was Miki's friend, then told her that the clothes suited her, and left the bathroom. Chizuru kept thinking that he could unexpectedly be a good person. She hurried out and met her friend, who had asked where she had been. Chizuru apologized and told her that she had been in the bathroom. Miki asked if she knew where Yuga was, so Chizuru was surprised he wasn't there. Then, a man intervened and told them he had left. Miki asked where he went. But he didn't know for sure, only that he wouldn't be back today.
Sometimes, he leaves to wherever,
the man said. Chizuru was puzzled by his words, so the man explained that he went to an unknown place, and they also didn't know when he leaves. Night had fallen, and Yuga was carrying bags full of groceries, heading towards his apartment. As soon as he opened the door, joy lit up his face. The surprise was that there was a woman waiting there.
Hey, are you eating properly?
As soon as she heard his voice, she screamed his name. She rushed over to him, but quickly fell to the ground. She looked at him, laughing as if nothing had happened. Then suddenly, her expression and tone changed. She told him she would end his life. However, he asked her not to say that because he paid for the place she lived in and also brought her food. Then he said,
"And there's no woman better than you, Keren."
Keren was tortured by his words. The chains were under stress. Azuma's eyes widened in horror at what she had witnessed, while still being choked. She took a few steps back from the horrible scene she saw. At that moment, Yuga turned around, seeing who was there. However, Azuma turned and ran away from that place. She remembered what had happened earlier, when Maki told her to follow him. While running for her life, she realized that Yuga was bad news. As she ran, she thought of reporting him to the police, but she hesitated. Then she stopped to gasp for air, lost about what she was to do. As her mind raced with thoughts, her mind conjured Shun. The next day. Afterward, Azuma returned to her work and expressed her desire to quit that same day, despite not even having started yet. Yet Azuma felt bad for Miki, but she didn't want to come back to that place. She was scared shitless of Yuga. In front of her, the dude told her to take her request to Yuga. After that, her face paled. At that moment, Yuga barged in and stood behind her, smiling and whispering,
"You called?"
She turned around to see him with wide eyes, but Yuga's eyes narrowed when he asked,
"Can you lend Chizuru to me for a bit?"
So they took off, and as they left, they headed off. They entered an empty room where she was asked about what was going on. As she stood there confused, he scrolled through his phone, asking her to look at it. He showed her a photo of Karen on his phone. Immediately, Azuma's eyes widened in recognition. She knew that photo was the same girl from the day before. Her reaction made Yuga sure that she was the one who saw him assaulting Karen. Azuma was so scared. Her face was stunned when he asked her if she was afraid of chains because of the scene when she saw Karen being confined. Then he smiled softly, trying to lighten the mood. He smiled, explaining to her,
"Rest assured, it's just that kind of play."
After that awkward moment, she smiled at him, accepting that everyone had their own tastes. He relieved a sigh while smiling at her, as he grabbed something from his back pocket. All of a sudden, he launched himself, attacking her with his knives. Screaming, she swiftly dodged his attack. Pissed, he clenched his teeth while she was stunned, looking at him. Next, he came after her and grabbed her with his own hands, silencing her. Then he knocked her down under him and lifted his weapon to end her. While her eyes were wide, scared and shocked, he whispered,
"Sorry, okay, Chizuru."
As he intended to take her life, his eyes darkened, explaining to her,
"Since you saw that,
Next, he lowered his knife to her neck, whispering,
I've got no choice but to end you."
In her final moments, Azuma's eyes welled up with tears as she awaited her inevitable end. Hotel 303. At Shun's house, he was handing him some hot drinks and asking if he had those arrangements. As his grandpa was drinking, he asked him, Already making a move, huh? Across from him, Shun sat down, saying that he needed one more piece. Sitting there, he had admitted to his gramps, "If I can get that one piece, I could drop Ushiro to rock bottom." Then he remembered the times before when he bullied him. At that memory, his hands clenched the cup with force, thinking about that one piece. In another place, Yugo was choking Ozma and holding a knife near her neck, admitting that he wanted to end her life for what she had seen. Determined, he moved his knife to slit her. Pressing his weapon on her neck, he whispered to her, "Goodbye." At that moment, somebody entered the room, telling him that he had a request. That guy saw Yugo holding down the girl, so he assumed he had walked into something, while Ozma was still being suffocated. Yet Yugo turned around while still hurting her, and he smiled at him, reassuring him, "No, everything's fine here." Then he warned her, "Don't mess with me. You got that?" Then he left her to go, and stood up, smiling at that guy and pretending that he didn't know it was her first day. And for that, he suggested that they should celebrate. Still coughing, Ozma held her neck with her hands, scared shitless that she could have been killed. While she was still on the ground, one of them approached her. It was Yuga. He hissed, "After work, come back here. I'll decide what to do with you." She trembled, consumed by terror. Then, with a maniacal grin, he whispered, "Have a safe trip, Chizuru." Later on, at some hotel, Ozma went looking for that hotel. As she stood there looking at it, she remembered room 303, where she was supposed to be. But deep down, she was thinking of running away. Yet, fear crippled her. She wasn't sure about what they would do. Yet, she went and entered that hotel, thinking to herself what kind of person did that to a customer. As she thought of those bad people, her eyes widened in fear. So she held her arms together, refusing to do it. But on the other hand, something made her do it. So she peeked inside some room, looking inside. As she stood there, someone welcomed her and he told her he was waiting for his cute princess. Then he presented her with a bucket of flowers. Her smile blossomed, as if she adored those 100 million roses within it. As he handed her those flowers, he asked her, "This is your first time, is it not?" And she told him it was. As he adored her in a new dress, she beamed with joy at her transformed appearance, reassured by his promise to be gentle. Then she tried different dresses, so it made her think that it could be fun too. But she wasn't sure about that, and those 100 million roses. As she walked down the hall, her shoulders slumped, a visible sign that she wasn't quite herself lately. Then she gazed up at something with a worried expression. She stood in front of room 303, yet she was scared and hesitated to open the door because there was no going back. Yet she pushed her hand and twisted the door handle to open it. Peeking inside with only half her face, she cast a fleeting glance inside. After that, she entered the room and saw Shun standing there. Her eyes widened when she saw him inside. Then he eyed her and said, "You kept me waiting, Azuma-san." Uruma was at the Love Hotel. So what would happen? Ozma and Shun had met in that room. As he glanced at her, he told her that she had kept him waiting. Yet she was surprised to see him there. Following that realization, a surge of panic coursed through her. She abruptly turned away, pondering why'd he be part of such an illegal service. She sweated, thinking he might be into bad stuff, but Shun quietly corrected her from behind. To calm her nerves, he pulled out his phone and showed her a picture, confessing that he selected her because he recognized her. After she saw that, she barked at him about how he could know. Yet she calmed down, and she realized something else. Shun was trying to calm her down while she was losing it, thinking he had picked her on her first job. Then he turned around when he called after her. As he gazed at her, he asked, "I want you to tell me about Ushiro." She looked at him confused. She didn't expect him to ask that. After she filled him in on everything she knew, Shun knew Sakuraba Keren was with Ushiro. Then he gazed down, lost in thought. Then the memories from that time came back to him. In those moments, Kugo grasped Shun's trembling hands from behind, stealing his frantic motions as tears streamed down his face. As he caught him, Ushiro came in and Kugo urged him to hurt him. Drawing closer, Ushiro's hand brushed against Shun's cheek, his gaze filled with bad intentions lurking in his mind. Ushiro's eyes widened as he asked him if he knew what sexual curiosity was. Following that horrible encounter, Ushiro inflicted severe harm on him. Then they let him go. As he walked back alone, tears streamed down his face as he walked, consumed by the anguish of what Ushido did to him in the present moment. After he remembered that time Ushido assaulted him, his hands clenched. After he made up his mind, he glanced back at Azuma. He asked her to stay there, because he wanted her to stay away from Ushido. Her eyes widened in surprise when he said, "Right now, I need to get to him." Before he could go, she stopped him, asking him to wait. She looked up at him, with red cheeks confessing that she liked him. While she didn't understand why, his eyes widened in surprise. Then she lowered her head and whispered that when she was with him, she liked him. She had no idea why. Then his face started to sweat when she admitted that he was mean to her. Closing her eyes, she snapped that he was mean for not wanting her. After that, he smiled at her, softly saying, "Thank you for that, Azuma-san. But it's no good." His face darkened when he stated, "There are 4 people left. I'll definitely end those bastards." She was stunned when he told her that Ushido was the second one. As he started to leave, he said, "I can't turn back now." While leaving her, he told her to wait for him there. But she has another idea, because she stopped him. With determination in her eyes, she offered her help without hesitation. That caught him off guard when he turned back to her. She wanted to help him, because he had saved her lots of times. While they talked, some device was recording their conversation. Someone was listening to them talk about killing Ushido. Ushido's eyes narrowed with a fierce intensity as he monitored the device, capturing every word exchanged between Azuma and Shun. His whole focus was on their conversation. Gentlemen. Shun was walking on the streets, his gaze vacant. On the other hand, Ushido looked happy at his gang as they gathered. As they gathered around him, he said, "Our enemy is going to attack." He was instructing them about what to do if his enemy attacked him. His gangsters were unsure of who Ushido's enemy even was. One of their faces froze as Ushido informed them that Gano was mobilizing to kidnap Chizuru. Then he barked, "Take your places." Ushido smirked, amused by Shun's obliviousness to being bugged. He was shocked that Shun nabbed Sengoji, but Kyo's response raised even bigger red flags. While he never expected Kuga's intel to be valuable, Kuga shot him a glance and disclosed that Shun was tight with Azuma. Uncaring, Ushido lightened up the cigar to smoke it. As he smoked, feeling the high wash over him, he grinned at the memory of Shun's tear-streaked face from before, eagerly anticipating the chance to see it again. However, the gangster grew frustrated when Ushido picked Gano for the job. He groaned.
Gano's behavior is odd,"
prompting the other guy to ask if he was truly reliable. Then his eyes widened when he said,
He was called the Bomb."
That guy was a demon when he was in elementary school. The dude's face paled when he told them all about the horrible things Gano did. One of them confessed to witnessing Gano in a brawl. Then he asked if Gano understood the key to winning a fight. And the dude guesses with strength, but he was wrong. He added height and weight, but all of his answers were wrong. With a horrified look, he whispered,
"Get angry fast."
He punched straight ahead into her face. He was so angry, he kept punching her. As the man on the ground crawled desperately to intervene, Gano's rage boiled over at her mockery. He summoned every ounce of his strength to inflict violence upon her. But then he stopped his attacks, confused. He thought he had a connection with her. Suddenly, his phone rang, so he took it out and picked it up, asking who was on the other phone with him. He found out that it was Ushido. Following, Gano smiled, thanking him for the other day. He was happy about it. Then he asked,
"So, what do you need today?"
Ushido smiled, confirming what he wanted. He asked her to take the Azuma girl. Gano was thrilled that he could do whatever he wanted to Azuma, as long as he didn't kill her. Then he asked for consent while the girl beside him was bleeding. In that hotel, Azuma was all alone in that room. She was scared of being alone there, while Shun's words rang in her mind. "Don't open that door, no matter what." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. So she turned around and got closer to the door when someone said, housekeeping. And Ozma was suspicious. She knew they shouldn't come when the room was occupied. All of a sudden, the door lock clicked. Ozma was frightened that the lock moved. Next, Gano barged in on her, saying, "I'm the gentle housekeeper." Gano stepped into the room, happy that Hyuga had made arrangements in the Love Hotel. She was stunned, looking at him while connecting the dots. If Ushiro knew him, that meant he was bad news. He was so huge as he offered his hand, asking, Are you Chizuru-chan? In that instant, he touched her lips. You look nice. And his smile grew just to admit, you look like my first crush. Just as his fingers reached out to ensnare her, she bolted away in a desperate escape. She stood away from him, shaking, when he furiously asked, Why are you running away? I asked you, Chan, for consent. She had no clue what consent he was talking about. Then he smiled and told her he got it. However, she felt increasingly uneasy when he assumed her desire to sleep. He was so glad that he started to take off his shirt. So he stripped off his shirt, revealing his imposing muscular chest. Then tossing the shirt aside, he confidently moved closer, under the mistaken belief that he had her approval. However, Ozma's face contorted in terror. So, in a frantic bid for escape, she seized the nearest object, hurling it towards him with all her might, momentarily blinding him. As he stood there, he took off the sheets. He looked around. He was toying with her. He shouted, Hide and seek. Trembling uncontrollably, Ozma hid in the bathtub. Drenched in sweat and paralyzed by fear, she was utterly helpless, realizing she couldn't even reach out for help without her phone. She knew if he found her, it was the end for her. Suddenly, Gano smiled as he shouted, Found you. Yet as he lifted the bed, she wasn't there. So he lifted almost everything looking for her. Hearing his voice made her close her mouth from the fear she felt. As he wrecked everything in his search, she remained elusive, nowhere to be found. But then, he remembered something. As fear crippled her, Gano said he remembered his 8th grade love. He shared that there was a girl who liked another guy, and he couldn't get her consent. Adding that something pissed him off, so he stabbed her without care. As he looked around, he said out loud that sex without consent was empty. When he added, Chizuru-chan, you remind me of my first crush. Her eyes welled with tears. The door rattled where she was hiding. He tried to open the door, but the key didn't turn. Her eyes bulged in sheer terror. After that, he shattered the door lock. As he barged in, Ozma stood there, frozen in fear. Her back slammed against the wall as he cornered her, demanding, Which will it be? Consent? He closed the distance between them. He hissed, Yes or no? Stuttering and crying, she shook her head, meaning she didn't give him consent. However, he didn't like that answer, so he grabbed her neck, shocking her. Next, he lifted her, threatening that if she was going to refuse him, he turned his grip. He snapped. He wrongfully accused her of giving the wrong answer. The veins in his head bulged from his anger. He reiterated. He was so angry that he was about to hit her, but something happened. Someone came and kicked him, knocking him down. He glanced back. Who? Even Ozma was surprised when she asked him who he was. The newcomer stood there with a helmet on his head, introducing himself. I'm the biker man. Biker man. Outside on the streets where people walked, Shun was heading to his location. As he passed Gano, his eyes widened upon hearing him say, Azuma Chizuru, wait for me. He stopped in his tracks, turning around, knowing that that dude was dangerous. However, Shun's concern about his identity being revealed compelled him to cover his face. Then something caught his attention. He saw a helmet on a bike. He followed Gano all the way into this room. Gano stopped, a confused look puzzling his face. Who are you? He stood there and told him, I'm Biker Man. Gano stood there like a dump, while Ozma figured it was Shun. In one fluid motion, Shun looked at her, his index finger pressing against his lips, signaling the need for secrecy without uttering a word. Shun stood there in the door. Gano was pissed. He stepped forward while pacing his words.
Don't get in the way of my...
Suddenly, Shun attacked him with fast punches. Next, used his leg to kick him. But then Gano grabbed Shun's leg, stopping him. Next, he flung him aside and Shun crumpled backward. After that, Gano moved closer to him while Shun sat there unmoving. Then he asked if he had done something. However, Shun was calculating his attack moves and how effective they would be. So he grabbed some pen from off the floor and lifted it in his hand, thinking he could use it as a weapon instead of punching him. Immediately, he launched himself to stab Gano, so he stabbed that pen into Gano's stomach. He thought that took him down. But all of a sudden, Gano punched Shun's helmet, making it shatter. As he punched him, Shun flew back. The punch was brutal, causing Shun to collapse on the floor repeatedly. When Ozma saw him like that, she was scared. Shun collected his thoughts. He couldn't help but be taken aback by the futility of his stab against Gano. Gano grunted as he shifted. Fuming, he advanced menacingly towards Shun. He swiftly attacked Shun, shouting,
My kind self has gotten this pissed. This is the first time.
Not faltering, Shun maintained his stance, hands poised defensively. Gano's eyes lost any sense of humanity. Shun was caught in realization. Don't tell me. This guy doesn't feel pain when he's angry. He was beating Shun over and over. He was angry, determined to end Shun's life. Shun's helmet was smeared with blood from the relentless beatings. He was helpless. Suddenly, he remembered his Gramps saying, detachment. Shun realized. That monster Gano's eyes were fuming with anger as he prepared himself. Yet, Shun was determined as he assumed his stance, executing a masterful technique. He extended his palm, silently resolving, I'll have to do that. In the heat of the fight, Gano shouted,
Die, you bastard!
He lunged at Shun, but Shun was prepared, poised to unleash a powerful special move. Shun's helmet was shattered, his eyes so sharp they could cut rocks. He then poised his hands, using the detachment move. Before he could attack, he remembered the warning of his Gramps. The risks are huge for this technique. You'll have to get close to your opponent, so if you miss, you'll be off to the other world. Shun knew that if he counterattacked it, it would harm him too. It was all or nothing, as both of them attacked each other. Then, there was a cracking sound. Then, Gano looked confused about what had happened after the attack. Shun dodged his attack, making Gano fall against the wall. Grunting, Gano groaned.
My arm isn't moving.
Then his eyes widened. Fear crawled through his body when he saw that his shoulder and arm were detached. After the realization, he screamed.
What the hell is this?
Beside him, Ozma looked shocked, but Shun only watched him carefully. He remembered the time when his Gramps taught him that technique. Gano lost his mind, shouting,
What did you do?
Shun was about to hit him again because he knew at that moment Gano's muscles were relaxed. At that moment, his Gramps' voice echoed through Shun's mind.
Use the path of flesh to detach.
Then, he did it. He used his hand to detach Gano's shoulder joints. Immediately, Gano fell onto his head after Shun's attack. Following, Shun knew that Gano couldn't move because his joints were detached. While Gano was crying in pain from the extreme blow, Shun stood behind him with fuming eyes. He just used the Kitayama core-style bare-handed hand-to-hand combat. Detachment. On the ground, Gano cried, shocked.
I can't lift my arms.
Next, he turned towards Ozma, startling her. He launched himself, angrily shouting,
What do we do about this? Fix it!
At that moment, Ozma's face was sweating, stuttering, saying no. She then slapped him so hard that his face cracked to the side. After that, Shun tied up Gano and left him in the bathroom. While he was on the ground, tied up with ropes, he threatened him that he would come after him to end him. Uncaring for his threats, they got out of that bathroom, while Shun was taking his helmet off, saying, he's a noisy one. Finally, he took his helmet off his face. Azuma's eyes sparkled with stars when she figured out it was Shun in front of her. He told her, "I've got to hurry to where Ushido is." He then glanced at her and asked her, worrying, "Azuma-san, what will you do?" Though her cheeks were red, she didn't say anything. While her eyes widened, he moved, telling her that he was leaving, though she was grabbing her skirt, feeling shy. She then gathered her thoughts. He turned her head to see when she called after him. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock when she kissed him. Azuma was kissing Shun. She caught him off guard as his eyes widened. Then the realization had settled in. Immediately, he pulled away from him. Embarrassment flushed Azuma's cheeks as she glanced at him, her face tinged with crimson. He stood there, dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His mind felt like it had been whisked away to an entirely different dimension. That kiss had Azuma blushing, all shy-like. She quickly apologized to him. With wide eyes, he was confused. Then he was stuttering, saying, No, it's fine." He was shocked. He started explaining. It's fine, or rather, it's kind of strange." She stood there, sheepish. With wide eyes fixed on him, he leaned in. Then just before leaving, he casually mentioned his leaving. Shun was sweating, feeling awkward as he said, "Azuma-san, go to the police for protection and make sure you don't mention me." As he made his exit, Azuma was left standing there, coolly caught off guard. Shun kept walking away from that room. He was startled by that kiss. His whole rhythm was unsettled. In room 303, someone said that was so messed up. The police officers looked at the mess inside of the room, saying, "She did well to get help." Officer Uta found herself perplexed by Azuma's skill in restraining Gano, while Anzai, positioned behind her, silently surveyed the scene. As another 2 police officers took a fuming Gano out of there, Anzai knew it was impossible for a girl to do that on her own. His remark made Uta snap at him, yet he added, "It also looks like his shoulder is dislocated." Azuma was there, covered with blankets, shaking as someone came in, saying, Excuse me." When she looked up, she saw Uta and Anzai greeting her. After Azuma filled them in about what went down, Uta typed down on her book, understanding that Azuma was assaulted by that man when a stranger came and saved her. Yet Anzai suspected something, so he asked her, "And what about the man you don't know?" Azuma eyed him, lying that she didn't know the man, and she said his name was Biker Man. After she shared that info, Uta was thinking about that name. At that moment, Gano glanced inside and shouted,
Biker Man!
He bellowed,
I was done in by Biker Man! I'm gonna end him!
The police scrambled to restrain him. As Uta and Anzai turned towards him, they suddenly realized that there was a genuine man known as the Biker Man. When Gano mentioned Ushido, Anzai's face paled. Yet Gano snarled with rage.
Let me go to Ushido! He didn't say anything about Biker Man being here!
Uta's eyes widened when she heard his name, and behind her, Anzai recognized Ushido's name. Unaware, Uta was smiling, thinking they were funny names, as she glanced at Azuma, seeking Anzai's concurrence, though he had vanished. Once she grasped that he had left, she snapped. Still fuming, Azuma told her that he had just taken off. She was so pissed that he was going solo again. In another place, Shun stood over there, wearing a hoodie and a mask covering his face. He watched this place carefully. One of the guys called Ushido and informed him, There's a pretty suspicious guy. Ushido was happy though. His smile almost broke his face as he whispered, So, you're here. He was excited about what Shun would do. Ushido knew the layout of this place like the back of his hand. He knew there were guards that took pride in their strength as they guarded the entrances. At the main entrance, there were the Mibu brothers. At the back, there was Sakuna, Nobuto, and Kawashima. And under the duct was Sera and Taido. Ushido was preparing himself if he defeated those guys. But before that, there were another 20 soldiers waiting inside. The war was about to begin, and Ushido, was enjoying every second of it. W-O-W. As he walked, Onzai was connecting the names of Senkoji, Shun, and Yuga, all of them related to the case that happened 4 years ago. As he was walking, the attention of many people around him was soon drawn to something else. He was still lost in thought. To think they're all fellow alumni of the same school. It was suspicious to him. As he approached the crowd, he remembered that Ushido came frequently around this place. When he looked up, his eyes widened. He was shocked. Onzai was speechless as he focused on what was in front of him, saying, "Wow." 30 minutes ago, some thug called Ushido, informing him that there was a suspicious guy there. As he got that call, Ushido was thrilled that Shun had come after him. His smile vanished when he saw Shun arriving alone. Realizing he thought Shun was being reckless to confront them all alone, risking his life. Memories flooded back of a younger, frightened Shun, and Ushido couldn't help but think he could have called for backup, as he gazed up, contemplating if Shun would be able to amuse him again. Though, his smile had vanished from his face when he heard some noises. Following, all those thugs were looking at someone scared. Then, Ushido quickly turned as his phone rang. His heart raced as he answered the call, his voice sharp. "What happened?" On the other end, a panicked voice replied,
It's terrible, Ushido. Please leave the shop immediately.
The man on the line, his face twisted in terror, stuttered as he tried to tell his boss. "The back exit. From the back exit." Then he shouted,
A fire has broken out.
Still on the phone, Ushido spat.
What? What are Kawashima and the rest doing?
Though the other man lost the words to reply. As he looked at all the beaten thugs, the dude was sweating as he told them that they had all been taken out. Ushido's face went pale, as the man told him they were running and that he should do the same. Ushido was frantic, yelling at his phone. As he stood there, some other mobsters noticed the smoke coming out. Suddenly, those mobsters saw some explosion coming from afar. Ushido's eyes widened in shock. One of them remarked that the explosion had come from the kitchen. Ushido was losing his mind. He had no idea what was happening. All of a sudden, someone shouted,
It's a bomb!
They were claiming that they were all about to die. Chaos broke in that moment while Ushido was trying to calm them all down. He fumed as they backed away, leaving him there alone. As they started to leave, he was deranged, shouting,
Wait!
Immediately, his eyes snapped wide. He spotted some figure walking towards him as his people left, until the figure approached, closer and closer. It was Shun, wearing that mask and standing around that fiery smoke. So he took down his mask and looked at Ushido, murmuring, "It's been a while." Ushido smiled at him, nervous. As they stood in front of each other among the dark smoke, Ushido looked at Shun and said,
"So, you've become capable enough to do this, huh?"
Uncaring of the fire around them, Shun replied with, "Seems like it." Then he added, "By the way," he continued informing him that Ozma was safe. Ushido was taken aback by that news. Ushido was so shocked that Shun took down Gano, but Shun didn't care about that man, only that he learned his name. Ushido sensed trouble and broke into a sweat. He grabbed his knife from behind him. In a frenzied state, he lunged at Shun with his knife, bellowing,
Urama!
But before he could get to him, Shun used his hand and stopped him by blocking his face. Next, he took away Ushido's knife from his hands, and in an instant, he knocked him to the ground and loomed over him, brandishing the weapon. With a vengeful glare, he declared, "I'm going to lead you to your grave now." He then lowered the knife towards Ushido's wide eyes. Later on, that Onzai police officer was looking at something, where around him, people were filming it. He was looking at the burning building, where smoke came from. Onzai stood thinking, people nearby wondering if anyone got hurt since it seemed that everyone had escaped safely. But Onzai had already sensed that Ushido would be missing soon. Somewhere else, in a dark place, someone screamed,
Urama! Where the hell is this?
Shun looked down at Ushido, whispering, "Be quiet, Ushido-kun." Shun had tied up the angry Ushido in a chair, blindfolded. Pair of anguish, a torture device used in medieval Europe. Ushido was tied up, naked and blindfolded. He was in a chair, screaming.
Where are you, Urama?
He tried to untie the ropes tying his hands, spitting.
Take off the blindfold!
He was struggling to untie his leg ties, and he did the same thing with his left leg. So Shun came and started to pull away Ushiro's blindfold away from his face. As he took it off, Ushiro was confused. The light exploded in his face, making him squeeze his eyes shut. While he was cursing, Shun was looking down at him menacingly, holding some device. Then, Ushiro looked up at him, figuring out what Shun was after. It must have been revenge. Then he barked, laughingly, making Shun confused. He was laughing at Shun, saying and asking,
Did you think I would be afraid?
Shun was taken aback when Ushiro told him that he always did as he pleased. After that, Ushiro smirked.
Actually, I laugh thinking about what'll happen to you after you're done with me.
Following, Shun's face darkened when Ushiro threatened him with,
I bet Kyuga, Hiro, and Kyo will mess you up.
Then he roared menacingly.
Even more than your family!
After that, he burst out laughing at him when they killed his family. To make things worse, he told him that he got so aroused by it. Shun, though, didn't show any signs that he was angry, as Ushiro kept insulting him. But his hands were clenching within his hoodie pockets. Afterward, Ushiro lifted his head up while Shun called him. Next to him, Shun pulled out that pair of anguish device, showing it to him. Though Ushiro had no clue what that thing was. Shun tugged some kind of thread from that device. The device opened. Shun warned him to listen to him. Ushiro stopped laughing when he saw that device opening. His eyes flared with fear as he saw it. The pair of anguish was a metal torture device that opened its 4 forks when rotated. So, it was originally made for gagging someone by pushing it into their mouth. As Shun crouched down behind him, Ushiro's jaw dropped in wide-eyed terror. He let out a scream, begging to stop him. However, at present, it is most famous for being the worst torture device used on either the anus or vagina. In the next instant, Ushiro froze, his body paralyzed from shock. A gut-wrenching scream erupted from him as he howled in agony. Then he glanced back, scared to know that that device was inside of him, and that Shun was going to use it. Shun pulled the key from the device. It was about to open. At that moment, Ushiro was frantic, screaming and lashing out.
Don't open it!
Though Shun didn't care, he was pulling it open. So, the torture device was slowly opening. With wide eyes, Ushiro was sweating buckets as he knew if it opened any further, it was his end. Though that pair of anguish device was opening wider, Ushiro realized that it would tear him from the inside. After that, Shun side-eyed him, saying, it tore. And that torture device fully opened finally. So Ushiro sat there, bleeding. But Shun stood near him, disturbing him with, things other than blood are mixed in. Gross. Ushiro's face went white as a sheet when he realized that he had just gone down with his rear end. Yet he was pleading with Shun to end his torture. However, Shun was about to switch the light off when he said, "It's time for round 2. With the click of the switch, it was just the beginning of the tragedy. Inside, Ushiro was scared looking at Karen, holding that torture device, contemplating if she was going to use it on him. Karen approached him slowly, whispering that she would. Next, she looked at that weapon, smiling like a devil, telling him she would put it inside him. So she showed him the device as she twisted it. Following, the torture device had opened up. After that, Ushiro was sweating buckets, wondering where it would be inserted this time. Right after that, he was pulling his chair and roaring at Shun not to mess with him. As he kept threatening to kill him, Ushiro watched him in silence, observing him. Suddenly, Karen took the device and attacked and shocked Ushiro. At that moment, Ushiro was losing it, crying out.
Karen, stop this!
Though she didn't stop, and quickly bludged that device into his organ. Immediately, he started shouting from the pain. Afterward, he collapsed onto the floor. With the gizmo inside, Ushiro was trembling from the pain. Then his eyes bulged from their sockets when he screamed, so he started to plead with her.
Pull it out! I'm begging you, please, pull it out!
though she crouched down next to him, unfazed, asking him to answer her 3 questions. She started with why she went out with her. As time ticked, Ushido was trembling from the pain. Then, he recalled the time they went out together and she was all smiles. Yet Ushido was freaking out, not understanding why he recalled that. So he barked at her.
Because I felt like it!
She twisted the device. It opened a little more. As he lay on the ground, he was screaming out in anguish. She was ready to ask her second question. She spat at him, wondering why he locked her in that place. Ushido, in great anguish, started to remember the times with her. He remembered the time when she was warming his cold hands with hers. He had no clue why those memories had come back. He was gasping at her, telling her that it was because of her good body. That he shouted,
Is that enough to let me go?
though Karen kept twisting the device. It was nearly fully open. Ushido groaned louder while the blood started to drip from within him. Yet, she gazed at him, unmoved by his suffering as she prepared to ask her final question. She looked directly into his eyes and questioned whether he had ever truly loved her. However, his voice was dripping with mockery. He spat in her face.
There's no way I loved you!
He kept insulting her, though her eyes wide open in anguish. So she quickly pulled the device, and finally, the anguish ended as the torture device fully opened. The pain, though, was unbearable to Ushido. He bled on the floor and gasped for air. After that, Keren smiled softly and happily that he wouldn't hurt anyone else any longer. Yet, Karen's state was unstable. She touched his blood, noticing that it was a lot. Then she looked at Ushido's messed up face, knowing it was finally over. However, her mind was on something else after what she had done. In one swift movement, she held the device near her neck. Shun's eyes widened in shock as she plunged that object within herself. The blood splattered everywhere. Shun was stunned, standing in place. Keren had just taken her own life. Keren had hurt herself. Before she could hit the floor, the worried Shun hurried and caught her. And on the ground, Ushido's eyes widened in shock. He saw her blood. His eyes bulged, terrified. In his last moment, Ushido remembered the time when he thought Keren was a strange girl, and how she treated him nicely. Yet his expression shifted. Surprised by her kindness, he had filled with confusion at the realization that he had nearly hurt. He looked up at her with a question in his mind. Curious, he simply asked her why she wasn't scared of them. So she told him that it was her job as class rep. Then, as she glanced at him, smiling softly, she told him that people weren't always who they seemed to be. When she left that day, he made it his mission to make her love him. He was so happy that everything they did was great, but he couldn't catch feelings. It was all just a front to win her over. He believed it was for her sake. With their fingers intertwined, her cheeks flushed as she admitted she was in love with him. Ushido was shaken, his eyes bugging as he gazed at her. It was the first time that he was told that. As his memories were a fog of darkness, there was something he wanted to say. But it was too late. Keren collapsed on the ground after losing all her blood. As he gazed at her, he was speechless. Laying beside her, he was stuttering and trying to reach her. Then his face paled, scared as he called after her. While looking at her for the last time, he was crying out.
Get in! Get in! Get in!
He roared when she didn't reply to him. All of a sudden, a foot came crushing his face downward. Shun stood over him, spitting in his face. What? Why are you getting all emotional? A single tear broke down from his face as he hissed at him. You don't have the right to do that. Ushido looked at him one last time, trying to say something, when he quickly whispered, I'm sorry. Shortly after, It was followed up by smashing noises. 2 people's judgment is complete. Only blood and silence remains. After what had happened, Shun buried Karen with his grandfather. After they finished the burial ceremony, his grandpa told him that the time had come. Shun responded calmly. Yeah. Then it was Yugo's turn. He was hanging upside down from the trunk of a tree and bleeding profusely. Shun approached him. Holding a knife, he cut his neck. At first, only a little blood came out. Then a huge amount gushed out, soaking the bucket. The grandfather approached to untie him, saying, "Make sure you get it all out." Then he handed Yugo over to Shun. Shun noticed that he had become completely light, so they carried him into the woods. They reached a pool. They placed him inside and put on their glasses for protection. Shun then brought gasoline and poured it over Yugo, lighting the fire. His body was engulfed in flames. After the fire consumed his entire body, Shun went to the river and poured the ashes into the water. His grandpa told him to go back because they had already been burnt. Shun gathered the bones and skull and placed them in the burning barrel, taking them out once they had become ashes. They continued to grind the remaining bones with a hammer until they turned into a dust, then threw that into the river too. With that, Ushiro was fully disposed of. Shun showed no signs of remorse. On the contrary, he seemed entirely composed. He put his hand in his pocket and took out a small piece of paper, surprising his grandfather. "What's that?" he asked. Shun explained that he found it in that room. It was Karen's suicide note. His grandpa asked if he was going to hand it over, though Shun didn't respond. But he had already made up his mind. The letter read as follows. "Dad, Mom, I can't come back. Don't come looking for me. Thank you for everything. Sakuraba, Karen." And thus, this was the letter that devastated her parents upon reading it. Shun returned after delivering it, unaware of the person who was watching him. Who could it be? Shit. In the middle of the street, a guy's voice was loud.
Were you making fun of me?
It was Madoka Hiro. The little boy told him he wasn't, but Hiro insisted that he had, and told him he had seen him do it. The little boy cried and tried to defend himself. Suddenly, Hiro's friends arrived and called out to him. He was surprised to see them, suddenly in front of him.
Kyo-chan? Kuga?
They asked him what he was doing, and he told them that the boy had been mocking him, so he was going to teach him a lesson. Hiro was very angry and demanded that the boy bow his head even further. Though Kyo-chan asked him to stop, he turned to her. He asked,
Why? It's his fault.
Though Kyo-chan smiled and asked him with a gentle tone to stop. Hiro was scared by this look and manner, so he pushed the boy and let him go. Then Kuga asked him if they wanted to talk about what had happened regarding Uruma. Hiro went crazy when he heard his name and asked him to hurry to get rid of him, because he had hurt Senkoji and Ushiro.
Who knows who will be next?
He laughed as his imagination pictured himself getting rid of him. Kuga agreed with him and told him that the sooner they killed him, the better for them. They were just waiting for a word from Kyo-chan. But she remained silent, and she told them she didn't want to, and that she wanted to see how things would go because she found it exciting. They left Hiro standing there. Hiro called out to Kuga, who turned to him with a look of, I really don't like the idea of us. Hiro, are you too scared of him? Then he left. Hiro stayed in that place, feeling angry.
Shit.
Inside the park, there was a boy drinking some juice, different from the one from earlier, though Hiro confronted him regardless.
You look like that kid from earlier.
The boy didn't understand what he meant. Hiro grabbed the boy's face and opened his mouth. The boy didn't understand who this person was and why they suddenly appeared in front of him. Then Hiro grabbed the bottle and forcefully opened it into his mouth. The taste was bitter. The boy couldn't distinguish what the liquid was. He was surprised to see the detergent bottle. The boy couldn't breathe as Hiro held the bottle and scolded him.
It's your fault. You embarrassed me in front of Kyo-chan.
The boy didn't understand what he meant or what he was talking about. Then he threw the bottle aside. The boy fell into the sand, and Hiro continued on his way, repeating,
I'll get him. I'll finish him. I'll finish you, Udama.
On the other hand, inside of the entrance to the school, Shun held a letter, and Chizuru noticed it in front of her. She was surprised by this and wondered if Shun had received a love letter. She began to think that this might be someone else competing with her and wondered if someone else had noticed his beauty. She felt anxious and disturbed, wanting to know who the sender was. Afterward, Shun left this place. She followed him, wondering to herself, Who? Until he reached far behind the gym. She watched from afar the events unfold and the arrival of this girl. She had a great curiosity to know who she was, until she realized this was the school's Madonna, Shirakawa Kaname. Twins. They stood there, unaware that Chizuru was watching them. Shirakawa blushed and told him that she wanted him to be her friend. Shun was relieved to understand that this was what she had meant, and Azuma also sighed in relief upon hearing this. Then, unexpectedly, Shirakawa mentioned that she had seen him and asked about why he had been to Sakuraba-san's house. Shun was surprised and shocked to learn that she had known her. Azuma remained behind the wall, eavesdropping. Shirakawa knew that Sakuraba was missing and was suspicious, wondering if Shun was looking for Sakuraba alone like she had thought. Realizing that she had misunderstood, Shun felt a bit relieved and told her that he didn't know what she was talking about. Then he asked her how she knew him and if they had met before. Shirakawa blushed and admitted that she had been watching him all the time. Shun was taken aback by her answer. Watching me? At this moment, they heard a voice from behind. She means to say I've liked you this whole time. Then he added, You're pretty dense, Udamin. Shun was puzzled and asked who he was. The boy introduced himself as Kaname Shirakawa's twin brother, Jun, and asked if Shun didn't remember them. Suddenly, Shun recalled a memory from the past and realized they were the Shirakawa siblings from elementary school. He told them he had recognized them because they had changed. Jun grabbed him and said, Udamin, you've gotten pretty good looking yourself. Shun, puzzled, asked why he was calling him Udamin, but Jun didn't mind. He got closer to Shun and asked, You're dating Kaname, right? Shun was surprised at Jun's statement. Dating? Aren't we just friends? Kaname was embarrassed and tried to stop her brother from saying such things. But he pushed her towards Shun and told them that there was no such thing as friendship between boys and girls. Azuma, consumed by jealousy, wanted to attack and finish them. But Kaname quickly got up and sincerely apologized. She started hitting her brother, telling him that he was bothering Shun. Feeling extremely embarrassed by what had happened, Shun suddenly grabbed his bag and hurried away, shouting, Sorry! This made Chizuru feel relieved as well. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Shun's younger brother's condition remained unchanged. Shun visited him as usual. He was contemplating on how far he had come. He held his brother's hand and asked him to wait a little longer. He then recalled the Shirakawa siblings, which they moved to halfway through elementary school. Noting that he hadn't been close with them at that time, he thought about how Kaname had seen the suicide note, but didn't find it threatening. Inside the school, the students were all in their classrooms. The representative talked about the Meiseki School Festival, that many people were going to be attending. He explained that there would be booths for each class, and they announced that they would choose a committee of boys and girls through a lottery, handmade by the class representative. Mone asked Azuma what she would do if she was picked. Amid the commotion, the representative picked the first name, which was Udama Shun-kun. Shun was shocked to hear his name, because he had been napping. He was clueless as to what had happened. Chizuru began to think that this might be her chance to take back the lead. The guy in charge started to pick another name, and Chizuru's heart was pounding. She hoped to hear her own name, but to her dismay, the name picked was Shirakawa Kaname-san. It was a shock for Chizuru, and she felt like her opportunity had slipped away. Target. Shirakawa stood up to announce Class A's play, which was Romeo and Juliet. Meanwhile, Shun was writing on the blackboard, thinking about how fate had put Kaname-san in the same committee and even in the same class as him. He heard one of the girls asking about the cast for the play, and wished he could work behind the scenes. One student mentioned they needed to choose Romeo and Juliet first, and Chizuru started daydreaming about playing the role alongside Uruma. However, her classmates had a different opinion. It should be Uruma and Shirakawa-san, although some boys wanted to try their luck at playing Romeo with Shirakawa. They eventually agreed that Uruma was the best choice, even though he wasn't thrilled about it. Shun felt uneasy about their decision, unlike Kaname, who was blushing out internally overjoyed. The discussions ended, and everyone took their roles in the play, and the script that they had to memorize. They then started rehearsing. Shun struggled with his role and performed poorly, while Ozma, playing the mother, tried to prevent her daughter from marrying Romeo. Ozma was intense in her lines that even her classmates noticed she wasn't reading from the script. They continued rehearsing in this manner. After rehearsal, Shun headed home, exhausted and sweating profusely. But he knew he had to endure more as the summer festival approached. He then remembered that he hadn't decided who would be his next target after Ushiro. Suddenly, he encountered Madoka Hiro. Uruma was surprised to see him, and Madoka started mocking him, saying,
Compared to you, I'm way better. Consider this a declaration of war.
People around were puzzled by his laughter, though Uruma asked, "Declaration of war?" He wasn't afraid and spoke confidently.
I look forward to this battle, all for Kyo-chan!
Suddenly, though, he went silent, frozen in place. Shun's demeanor changed upon the mention of his family, becoming very serious. Madoka was shocked and frightened. Shun was ready to attack him in his anger. But suddenly, he heard Shirakawa-san calling his name. Madoka was startled to see her.
This girl is Shirakawa Kaname?
Then he quickly fled, leaving them behind. Shirakawa asked Shun if that was the same Madoka-kun who was with them in middle school. He confirmed that it was. Students expressed their frustration while struggling to read lines from Romeo and Juliet. Following, Sayama Mone of the drama club announced the next scene. After she announced that Kaname and Uruma's kiss scene was up, they both turned towards her, surprised. Yet Ozma was worried about that scene. Even their classmates seemed surprised. As they all started to wonder, Kaname reassured them that they would just pretend, which made Ozma feel a little relieved at least. After that, Kaname headed to Shun and positioned herself to start the scene with him. As they held their hands together, she softly asked if he was ready. Shun was anxious, stuttering. Yeah. They looked at each other and started to perform their lines. Kaname was blushing, trying to keep up, and Shun was sweating too from all of the acting. Following, they stopped talking. They looked at each other. The crowd seemed excited for the next scene, getting closer, bit by bit, to perform the kiss. The crowd was melting as Shun and Kaname were about to kiss each other. Suddenly, Sayama broke them apart, saying that was close enough for them, which made everyone gasp and Ozma sighed in relief. Then, Sayama started barking and ordered everyone, including Shun, to practice on their own. He turned disappointed and headed to the bathroom. So, as he went to the bathroom, he stood in front of the mirror. He felt impatient, skipping the usual routine. It became evident to him that Madoka was the next target. As he washed his hands, worry crept in. He was short on time and unsure of what to do. Later, in high school, as the day progressed, Shun practiced his lines while concentrating on his book. Someone called out to him. Jun entered the room with a smile on his face. Then he asked, "Where's Kaname?" Shun lowered his book and replied, "Uh-huh. She was just here a second ago." And to think Jun had come to show his coat off to his sister. As surprised as Shun, Jun was murmuring to himself about Shun. Then he glanced at him and asked him softly, "Take care of Kaname." This confused Shun even more. Afterward, Jun averted his gaze and murmured, "Kaname is serious about you." Despite being unaware of Shun's feelings towards her, he urged Shun to ponder over it. However, just before departing, he glanced back, cautioning, "Oh, if you were to make Kaname cry, who knows what could happen." With a final shout of, "Later," he left, leaving Shun speechless as he stood there, though someone was watching him. Kaname watched him, blushing and wondering if he was alone. so she entered that room and chatted with Shun. After a while, they stopped talking and just stood in front of each other. She blushed, eager to ask something. His eyes widened in disbelief as she proposed that they practice. Despite his stress about the situation, he clenched his hands tightly around his book. Nevertheless, they began to roleplay the scene once more. They recited the lines again, hands intertwined. Blushing, Kaname shyly said her line, stealing glances at him. Still, he maintained a serious composure as he murmured the final line. Once the lines were done, they locked eyes, enjoying each other's company in the silence. They moved closer, drawn together. Their faces were mere inches away from each other. Then, Kaname closed her eyes and leaned in. Yet, Shun's face flushed red as he thought to himself,
This is closer than before.
Suddenly, he pushed her away from him, making her gasp. Apologies intertwined, their faces flushed, together. But when she confessed her feelings, he stood behind her, stunned and silent. Then he asked, "Why?" He looked at her and asked her again, "Why me?" She started telling him the story when they were in elementary school. However, he was shocked to know that she was bullied too by those 5 people. She recalled all of the times back then, when those 5 bullies were hurting her. Starting with Dakota, he forced her to drink something. She was crying, scared for her life. At that maniac, Dakota held out a bottle towards her, explaining, "Dirt juice." The bottle had worms inside of it. She slapped it away from his hands, making him upset. Nevertheless, those 5 bullies held her down and kept torturing her. So she then told Shun that she didn't know why she was being targeted by them. She cried alone under the rain. Though someone approached her from behind, she glanced back to see who it was. She looked at a worried Shun, asking her, "What's wrong?" She looked at him, confused. Shun covered her from the rain with his umbrella, telling her, "You'll catch a cold, you know." That day was the day something changed. The rain stopped at that day when she met him. She told him that he was a light, and that he was her first love. However, she knew those 5 bullies had changed their target to him. Their bullying changed from her to him. With much emotion, she admitted that she had transferred her schools, but she couldn't save him. So, he was just listening to her with worry. Yet her voice was breaking as she told him that she was thinking about how she could have made it up to him. Then she broke, crying and apologizing to him, even though it was a late one. However, he glanced at her and firmly said, "Shirakawa-san, it isn't your fault." Though she wanted him to know something. While glancing away from him, she confessed that she liked him, for real. From the time he was young to this day, she had always liked him. Yet he was sweating, having no idea what to say to her. Then she suggested that when the sports festival was over, she wanted to hear his feelings towards her. Shun was taken aback by her admission as she bolted away from him. He looked at her, flabbergasted, speechless. Then he recalled Jun's words, "Take care of Kaname." The whole situation was piling up as he groaned to himself. What am I going to do? As he left, he was shocked that a beautiful girl liked even him. While he walked away, he exclaimed to himself, his voice trembling, "How can I deal with this? I can't go ask Gramps." However, Ozma was watching him from afar. She hid back, watching him closely. She looked pissed. Later on, Anzai clutched the email, his eyes narrowing. "So, this letter was mailed to you?" he asked. The woman across from him nodded, confirming it was Keren's handwriting. Then he revealed a photo of Shun, inquiring, "By the way, do you recognize this kid?" But she shook her head, claiming she hadn't seen him. As Anzai's partner, Uta waited impatiently. Anzai had hit another dead end, and his mind raced with, "I wonder if he thinks he's on the side of justice." Uta, however, was pissed that he was talking to himself. Anzai, resolute, vowed to teach him what real justice meant. The night before. Outside, Madoka was excitedly sharing his plan to bring down Uruma with Kyo-chan. Kyo-chan was impressed with the plan. This made Madoka even more enthusiastic. He shouted at the top of his lungs.
Yes!
He started dancing with joy, shouting, Kyo-chan! Kyo-chan praised me! He could hardly wait for the next day, when he would execute his plan. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the students had finished their preparations, and Shirakawa was encouraging them. Uruma had mastered his role, and so had Shirakawa, who was very excited about the Romeo and Juliet play. The day ended and night fell. Shun was walking home, exhausted as usual, thinking to himself,
It's already night, huh? It's been like this every day lately. But that ends tomorrow.
As he walked, someone was watching him from behind. Suddenly, Shun stopped when he heard footsteps behind him. He quickly turned around, startled, to see that it was his classmate, Ozuma. Azuma-san. Without any introduction, Ozuma asked him to reply. Shun didn't understand what she was talking about. Then she explained that she was also waiting for one. Shun realized she had overheard Shirakawa's confession. He could feel the burning jealousy emanating from Ozuma and tried to calm her down.
You know.
Suddenly, he heard someone running towards him and felt a hand grab him.
Yo, Udaman! Let's go back together.
It was June. He was followed up by his sister catching up. They greeted Azuma, who was still visibly upset. Then, June stood between them, looking at both of them. Huh? Are the two of you dating? Everyone felt embarrassed upon hearing that. Shun quickly clarified that they weren't, which made June happy as he congratulated his sister, making her even more embarrassed. They headed to a nearby park and started talking about the next day and how much they had practiced. June asked Shun if he still remembered his lines, to which Shun replied,
Somehow.
June then shouted enthusiastically,
My yakisoba is perfect, so be sure to come eat some.
His sister mentioned that he had always practiced at home, and Azuma agreed. June looked up at the sky, and when he opened his eyes, he was surprised. Shun looked up too, equally amazed by the beautiful stars shining brightly. The stars illuminated the earth on that quiet and beautiful night. At that moment, June broke the silence that had settled among them.
All right, let's make tomorrow's festival legendary. We'll be the Festival Avengers!
His classmates were surprised by his enthusiasm. Azuma told him that he was in a different class, which caught him off guard. She then told him not to exaggerate. Shun smiled at their conversation, and they were joking around and having fun together. Shun felt a strange sensation. It's the first time I've experienced something like this. He was relaxed and happy for the first time in a long while. After spending time with his friends, he headed back home, where his grandfather was waiting for him. His grandfather asked, "How are things?" Shun replied that everything was fine, and that he had finished the preparations. He added, "Tomorrow is finally the day. Tomorrow, after the festival ends, I'll finish Madoka. Finally, tomorrow." Throw up and diarrhea. The day of the festival arrived, and the crowd outside was bustling. June was busy cooking yakisoba for the customers and giving it away for free to the cute girls. The festival was diverse and had many attractions. Inside the waiting room, the students were changing into their costumes. Shun's friends were amazed by how handsome he had looked in his outfit, and even Ozuma thought he looked great. One of the girls noticed Kaname and told her that she looked super good. Kaname approached them shyly in her long dress and asked them quietly how she looked. Shun was stunned by her beauty and said awkwardly, not bad, I guess." His male friends reacted animatedly to his comment, while Ozuma couldn't bring herself to admit that Kaname looked cute. Monet then informed them that they would be going soon and that all of the preparations were finished. Shun felt nervous, which surprised Ozuma, since she thought that he was too strong to get nervous. Meanwhile, Shirakawa was frozen in place. Having seen something that surprised her, amid the preparations, one of the girls brought in a box. She told him that someone had brought coffee for them. Everyone was delighted by the treat and asked who had sent it, but the girl didn't know since she found it outside. The girl approached to give coffee to the leading actors, but Kaname was nowhere to be found, which was strange since she had been there just moments before. Meanwhile, outside, Madoka was walking down the street. A small child, excited with the hot dog that he had just bought. He ran into Madoka. He caused a stain onto his pants. Madoka stopped and looked at the child with a creepy smile.
Are you all right? You know, you should be more careful,
he said. The child's mother came over and apologized, but Madoka was pleased with how his plan was unfolding. He wasn't bothered at all. He laughed maliciously, knowing that his plan was succeeding. Chopping off the stuff and taking down Uruma, he mixed in some of his specially made stuff into the drink. To ensure Shun drank it, he had poisoned the coffee that everyone was drinking. This was why he was confident that he would bring down Uruma and make a mockery of him during his performance. Then, he would begin to execute his next plan, stabbing Uruma while he was weak and finishing him off. He was speaking loudly. Someone overheard him. The expressions of malice were evident on his face. He was so enamored with his plan that he started laughing hysterically. At that moment, he heard a girl's voice asking what he had just said. It was Shirakawa, who was courageous for intervening, but looked frightened by what she had just heard. When he saw her, he smiled wickedly.
Shirakawa?
What could he be planning next? Everyone took their coffee and shouted in unison, "Let's drink to her best performance! Cheers!" Shun was about to drink his coffee. Suddenly, one of his classmates shouted,
Ugh, what is this? It's gross.
Everyone started complaining about the coffee, thinking that this must be some kind of prank. Shun began to suspect that something was wrong. He had a bad feeling about it. The time for the performance had arrived, and they headed to the hall. Meanwhile, Shirakawa had caught Madoka red-handed, plotting to kill Shun. Madoka didn't seem scared and said with a sly tone,
Shirakawa, so you plan on interrupting me again, huh?
Shirakawa didn't understand what he meant. He licked his lips and said,
Interruptions need to be punished.
Shirakawa was shocked by his words and tone. People started to gather at the theater. Everyone took their seats. The students were worried. Their play was starting in 10 minutes, and Kaname hadn't shown up yet. Her classmates searched everywhere, starting to think that she might have stage fright. Azuma and Shun overheard this. Azuma exclaimed that wasn't it. Kaname-san told everyone to do their best. She was sure that something must have happened to her. Monet didn't waste any more time and decided to take Kaname's place, asking for her lines and a substitute costume. Shun didn't understand what had happened and was worried about her. Then, one of the students noticed that something was stuck to his classmate's leg. When he picked it up, he told them it was a note from those drinks. Shun asked to see it, and found written on it,
Drink these.
Turning the paper over, he read,
It's fine if you admit I'm better than you.
He remembered Madoka's words.
Compared to you, I'm way better.
Shun was shocked to realize the truth. He quickly ran out of the hall, leaving his friends confused about why he left. Jun also noticed him, running down the street. Uraman? Shun was running fast, filled with anger. I didn't notice it. I didn't expect me to be the target. He was terrified that something bad had happened to Shirakawa-san, recalling her words and that she was waiting for his answer. He couldn't think calmly and ran as fast as he could. Shit. He was determined to reach her in time. Make it in time. He was surprised to see her sitting on the ground. He felt a wave of relief wash over him and thought to himself, I made it in time. Kaname noticed him beside her. He approached her saying, That's a relief. He asked if she was okay. She was hugging herself, her dress torn. She pleaded with him to step back and not come any closer. Uruma threw up at the sight of the disaster. When she met Madoka, he started moving closer to her, looking at her in a lecherous way.
Interrupters need to be punished,
he said. Kaname felt a surge of fear and tried to run away, but he grabbed her.
Wait a moment,
he said. She started pushing him, begging him to let her go. She struck him in the face with her elbow, which made him angry. and he punched her, causing her to fall to the ground. He then went over and grabbed her again. Shun took the phone and called her brother, then told him that she was in the shower. Her brother asked what had happened to his sister. She didn't want to talk. Shun apologized and told him he couldn't say anything, then hung up on him. June couldn't understand what he meant.
What do you mean you can't say?
June broke down in tears and started shouting.
You need to tell me! I don't know what I can do for Kaname!
Shun felt deeply saddened and dissatisfied with what had happened. He remained standing in his place. Regret and anger. A boiling fury overflows from his fist. Next time, judgment. Madoka returned home and remained lying on the floor in his room, thinking about Shirakawa and what he had done to her. Suddenly, he jumped up, excited, wanting to do it again. Just then, he panicked when he heard someone knocking on his door. It was his mother, who asked him what he was doing and if he was studying. She asked if she could come in, but he told her that he was busy and that she couldn't. She then informed him that he had received a letter. She had no idea who it was from, so she left it under his door. Madoka quickly rushed to grab the letter, wondering if it was from Shirakawa. As soon as he opened the envelope, he found the word challenge written in bold letters, along with a date and location stating that the sender would be waiting for him at the abandoned factory on the mountain and was looking forward to it. Madoka immediately knew the letter was from Uruma. He remained silent for a moment before bursting into laughter, insulting and mocking him. Madoka was pleased with himself, believing his initial plan had worked. Madoka stated that he wasn't the same as before. He accepted Uruma's challenge, saying,
Let's have a match. Fair and square.
Madoka headed to the abandoned factory in the middle of the forest. He hid behind one of the trees. He shouted,
Uruma! I've arrived! Come out! Come on, you virgin!
Madoka was using a loudspeaker. The speaker said,
Now let's have a fight, fair and square!
He was luring him out to reveal himself. Madoka recorded his voice to lure Uruma towards him and surprise him from behind. He was very pleased with this plan. He peeked from behind the tree and saw Uruma standing there. Without thinking, Madoka charged at him, holding a knife, attempting to take him down. But Uruma was smarter and spoke from behind. What happened to fair and square? As soon as Madoka turned around, Uruma attacked him. In the past, inside the classroom, the teacher asked them to create their clay sculptures. Madoka was extremely excited, thinking about the praise he could receive. The teacher gave them the signal to begin, and at that moment, one of Madoka's classmates patted him on the back. When he turned around, he found that it was Kyo-chan, who asked him what he was going to make, though Madoka had no idea. Kyo-chan made a suggestion, and Madoka was thrilled. He then told him about the super robot buying. Madoka was surprised by his suggestion because it seemed extremely difficult. Kyo-chan realized he couldn't do it, but Madoka loved the challenge and told him to leave it to him. He smiled at him and said that he expected it by the next semester. Madoka was excited about the task and started working, thinking he had to do his best. The class ended, but Madoka remained engrossed in his sculpture. Even at home, he did nothing but work hard on his sculpture to receive praise from Kyo-chan, staying up late into the night. The day finally came when he finished, and he took it to show Kyo-chan. He held it and began to praise him. Madoka felt overwhelming joy when he told him that he had a talent for this kind of thing. Madoka couldn't believe what he was hearing, but suddenly, Kyo-chan smashed the clay with force, leaving Madoka in shock. He then asked him in an icy cold tone why monsters destroy cities. He continued, saying it's because they know how hard it was for humans to build them. That's why monsters can't help it. He started speaking harshly, telling him how much fun it is to be a monster. Madoka couldn't comprehend what had just happened and remained in shock the entire way home, thinking about what Kyo-chan had said. He then passed a park where Uruma and his brother were happily building clay mountains. When they went to fetch some water, Madoka approached the clay mountains and, without any hesitation, stomped them, destroying them with his foot. He felt a mix of emotions, joy and tears pouring from his eyes. He left him confused as he continued on his way. From that moment on, Kyo-chan became everything to him, and he followed him everywhere. It was because of him that he became who he was. He woke up from his sleep to find Uruma in his face. Uruma had him tied up tightly and asked,
Is that sweat or tears?
Whatever. He then told him that it was time for punishment. Madoka found himself bound by both his hands and feet, sweating and in disbelief that he had been caught and that his plan had failed. However, he decided to remain calm. He looked at Uruma and greeted him in a hesitant voice, then asked about the device on his thumb, as it was causing him some pain. Uruma sharply asked,
Why did you do that to Kaname-san?
Madoka's eyes widened upon hearing this, and Uruma demanded that he stop pretending to be dumb because he knew it was him. Madoka tried to remain calm, much to Uruma's surprise, then suddenly exploded, yelling,
Ah! Don't you dare call her Kaname! Listen up, Uruma! She's my woman now!
Uruma approached him, thinking about what he would do to him as Madoka continued to shout and curse. Uruma then asked if Madoka knew that from long ago in Europe, people believed that criminals were possessed by the devil, and that the first form of torture used against them was called thumb crushing. He explained that the more it was twisted, the more the thumbs would be crushed. He told Madoka that his nails would gradually crack and peel away, and that he hoped to remove the demon inside of him. Madoka grew furious, screaming and cursing at Uruma, asking if he really thought he'd be scared of his nails, insisting that it should be Uruma who was afraid. Uruma silently stared at him, then grabbed the device and began twisting it. Madoka's pain increased, and as Uruma continued, Madoka lost control, screaming and begging him to stop. But Uruma calmly persisted, gradually tearing off Madoka's nail until it finally ripped away, blood bursting out. Madoka thrashed wildly, screaming,
Ah! It hurts! It hurts! It hurts! It hurts!
Uruma watched him in surprise, then told him to listen as he reset the device, but Madoka continued screaming in agony, his voice filling the room. Madoka remained in that frenzy, screaming and refusing to listen to Uruma. He kept shouting, telling Uruma to shut up. Quietly, Uruma approached the device and twisted it again, causing Madoka to scream louder, and then he stopped. Madoka was in excruciating pain, his fingers throbbing. Uruma, surprised, asked,
Is that the only place that hurts?
Madoka didn't understand what he meant. Uruma, still puzzled, told him that people usually feel the most important things to them, but then added that it didn't matter, because Madoka wasn't really human anyways. Madoka couldn't comprehend what Uruma was saying. All he could think was about how to escape. Uruma approached, removed the device from Madoka's fingers, and left, telling him to wait. Madoka couldn't believe that he had gone and left him alone. He felt overwhelming joy as he realized he had loosened the ropes around his hands and feet while moving earlier. This was his big chance. He began pulling at his hands with all his strength, again and again, until he finally freed himself. He stood up without a second thought and began to run, his eyes filled with happiness. But he stumbled and fell. He didn't understand what had happened. Something was wrong. He couldn't run properly. He looked down at his feet, and suddenly, fear and shock filled his eyes. He started screaming and crying, clutching his foot, realizing that his big toe had been broken. At that moment, Uruma returned. Noticing that the rope hadn't been tight enough, Uruma calmly told him that he had broken his toe while Madoka was asleep. He explained that it's strange how people can't walk without their big toe. Then, in a serious tone, Uruma asked, "Did you notice your most important thing?" Madoka lost control, hitting the ground and screaming.
Ah! I am supposed to be the one destroying people! Your family was destroyed, and so is Shinagawa! So the person destroying shouldn't be you!
Uruma approached and grabbed Madoka by the hair, dragging him as Madoka pleaded for him to stop. Uruma put him back in his place and ordered him to stop resisting so he could secure him properly. But Madoka didn't listen, screaming and thrashing about. Uruma made sure the rope was tight this time, while Madoka, terrified, wondered what awaited him. Uruma repeated,
3 joints in the arm, 3 joints in the leg.
He then approached a cover and said,
It's harder to stretch them than it is to crush.
Uruma pulled off the cover, revealing a large spiked wheel. Madoka looked at it in horror, shouting,
What is that?
At that moment, Madoka's freedom is taken away, and the wheels of judgment begin to turn. Many questions swirled in Madoka's mind about what was going to happen to him, and whether he was truly going to die. Uruma explained that the device was called the rack, and its construction was simple. By turning the handle, the ropes would pull his bound limbs little by little. Madoka wasn't interested in what Uruma was saying. He was thinking about Kyo-chan. Suddenly, he screamed loudly. Uruma sloshed water on him, telling him to shut up, and said they were exorcising the demons inside of him. He turned the handle, and Madoka began screaming for Kyo-chan to help him. Uruma told him that it was similar to finger crushing, a European torture method from the Middle Ages designed to exorcise demons, and that the worst demon inside Madoka was Shigoku Kyo. Then, Uruma shouted, "You must be thoroughly exorcised!" He twisted the handle again. At this point, Madoka's bones began to break. He screamed at the top of his lungs, blood started soaking his clothes, and Uruma noticed that Madoka's skin couldn't stretch anymore, as his joints had been torn. Madoka was in agonizing pain, wondering what was happening to him. Knowing these injuries couldn't heal, he again called out for Kyo-chan. Uruma, puzzled, asked why he was still calling his name, and told him that he didn't care about him at all. But Madoka refused to believe it, shouting that Kyo-chan was his friend. Uruma grabbed the handle once more, and the wheel began pulling Madoka's body towards it. Uruma explained that the second tendon, which connects muscles to bones and provides flexibility, was now tearing. He wondered how long it would last as the machine continued to work, ripping through Madoka's muscles as he screamed.
It's strange! I did everything just as Kyo-chan said!
Uruma told him that his tendons had been partially severed, and once they were completely cut, his muscles would become stiff, causing him unbearable pain. Madoka broke down, crying and screaming.
Kyo-chan! Save me!
Suddenly, someone appeared from behind and pushed Uruma aside. Uruma turned around, shocked. The person approached Madoka and asked if they had kept him waiting. Madoka couldn't believe his eyes.
Kyo-chan.
He stuttered in disbelief. He smiled at him and said he had come to save him. Uruma fell to the ground, while Madoka was overjoyed, thanking Kyo-chan for coming to his rescue. He then asked him to remove his restraint so they could murder Uruma together. But to his surprise, Kyo-chan headed towards the handle. Confused, Madoka called out to him, but he didn't respond. Instead, he gripped the handle and continued to turn it. Madoka screamed in disbelief, unable to understand why he was doing this. He shouted his name repeatedly, but he ignored him and kept twisting the handle. Madoka couldn't comprehend why Kyo-chan wanted to kill him. He begged her to stop, reminding her that they were friends, but he didn't listen. His bones were breaking, his joints tearing apart, and blood flowed from all over his body. In agony, he cried out,
But I believed in you! Why? Why do you want to break me? What's the meaning of this? You bastard! Shigaku! You son of a bitch! I won't forgive this! Die! 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 I'll kill you!
At that moment, Uruma woke up and softly muttered,
Good job.
Madoka was in a pitiful state, overwhelmed by pain, screaming because he knew his body was being torn to pieces. His flesh was completely shredded, his blood splattering everywhere, and his limbs scattered across the ground. He lay mangled on the table, barely able to speak.
Kyo-chan, it hurts. It hurts so much.
Uruma stood up, saying how spectacular it all was. Madoka could still feel everything happening around him, and saw Uruma go to thank Kyo-chan for what he had done. This left Madoka shocked, questioning whether the two of them had been together all along. Madoka's mind drifted back to the memories of the past. The day Kyo-chan shattered his clay figure. He'd always tried to get closer to him, but he never cared about him at all. This became painfully clear the day they went to the cliff, and he pushed him down without any concern for his life.
I knew the truth. All this time, I knew. Kyo-chan, I didn't want to remember that you weren't my friend.
He died. After Uruma and Kyo-chan confirmed his death, it became apparent that everything was fake. A mask worn by Grandpa. He was pleased with Uruma's work. Then Uruma pulled something out of his pocket. He told Grandpa that it had worked very well. He explained that he had managed to pour the liquid on Madoka when he struck him. The substance was called hallucinogens, which made people see what they wanted to see. Gramps murmured,
Even so, that was merciless.
Uruma, on the other hand, didn't seem to view it that way. In a sorrowful tone, he said it wasn't enough. After they were done with Madoka, the old man instructed Uruma to clean up. Obeying his grandfather, Uruma took one last look at Madoka and said, "Now that you're dead, you look like a victim." The next morning, the news of Madoka's disappearance had spread. Search posters offering a large reward for finding him were everywhere. Uruma noticed the news, but ignored it as he continued on his way to class. When he arrived, his classmates noticed Kanami's absence and began wondering if she was sick. The teacher then entered and told everyone to take their seats, as he had an announcement to make. He said, "Shirakawa Kaname has taken a break from school." He then explained that her illness had worsened. Everyone was shocked to hear this, as they had no idea she even was sick. Uruma lowered his head and remained quiet, lost in thought. As the school day ended, Kaname sat in her dark room, depressed and feeling hopeless. Suddenly, she heard someone knocking at her window. She went to open the curtain, only to be surprised by Uruma sitting on her balcony. She opened the window, confused, about to ask him why he was there. But he interrupted her, saying, "It's my fault. I'm sorry you had to go through all that." Kaname didn't understand what he meant by that, and she told him it wasn't his fault. Uruma clenched his fists, uncertain if her scars would ever heal. But he went on to tell her that he had taken care of Madoka, and that it was all over. Kaname stood there, motionless, her eyes widening as she heard those words. Uruma continued, reassuring her that she was safe now, and that no one would ever hurt her again or discover her scars. He then urged her to be strong. He wanted her to live. Kaname couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She began crying uncontrollably, overwhelmed by everything she had endured. Uruma left her alone and walked away. Her brother, who had been watching him from a distance, saw Uruma walking further and further away. Meanwhile, Uruma visited Kakeru at the hospital and was surprised that his hair had been shaved. He was happy to notice his brother's hair starting to grow back, which gave him hope that he was still alive. In a calm tone, Uruma told him that it would all be over soon, because only two remained. Elsewhere, Kyo-chan and Daichi were discussing the news of Madoka's disappearance. fully aware of who was responsible. Daichi asked Kyo-chan for permission to deal with Uruma, to which he agreed. With a thirst for Uruma's blood, Daichi set off, ready to finish him. The girls were gathered, talking about something and laughing, while Shizuru was not paying attention to them, her mind elsewhere. Her friend Moon tried calling her several times, but Shizuru didn't respond, leaving Moon no choice but to hit her to gain her attention. Shizuru held her cheek and asked why she hit her, to which Moon replied that she wanted to bring her back to Earth. Shizuru was surprised and asked if hitting was normal for that. Moon told her that she had completely spaced out and was not engaging with them, asking if something had happened. Shizuru was thinking about what she had seen at the festival, but she couldn't tell Moon about it. She was anxious, wondering if Kaname had answered him, then remembered that she too was waiting for a reply from him. The atmosphere around her was confusing, with Kaname's absence and Uruma appearing with that strange vibe. She was lost, unsure of what to do, feeling curious about what was going on. That's when she noticed Uruma across from her. Her heart started racing, her cheeks reddened in disbelief as he was looking right at her, walking towards her. She couldn't believe it was happening, wondering if he was going to give her the answer. She let her imagination run wild, picturing him hugging her and confessing his love. But he ignored her and walked past. After a few moments, she realized it. She kept staring, surprised, as Uruma said in a sharp voice, "I have to go to the bathroom. Could you move over?" The difference between him and Daichi was clear in terms of height and body strength. They finally met face to face. Shizuru realized that now wasn't the best time for a confession. Daichi raised his large hand, placing it on Uruma's shoulder. Then he leaned in and whispered in his ear. "Looks like it's my turn next." He walked away, leaving Uruma standing. Uruma thought of him as his next opponent, but Daichi was different. He was stronger and more violent than the others. He always won judo matches, forcing his opponents to kneel, as if the judo club was under his control. Since Daichi joined, club members started suffering serious injuries, with some losing their chance at becoming athletes. With Senkoji, Ushiro, and Madoka out of the way, Daichi was the last obstacle before Kyo. And as Uruma expected, he was very wary. Uruma was pondering how to deal with him when he suddenly froze in place, noticing a bright light coming from his home. He ran quickly, shocked to find that his house had caught fire. He was shocked when he saw the flames engulfing his house. He didn't know what to do. Standing frozen for a few seconds, he watched in horror. He remembered Gramps and rushed forward after dropping his bag. However, sparks from the fire flew towards him, preventing him from passing. He felt helpless. Moments later, his grandfather burst out, breaking a wall with great force. Uruma was relieved, but his grandpa wasn't in good condition. His left side was severely burned. He apologized to his grandson, telling him, "I messed up." He then collapsed to the ground. Uruma quickly rushed to him, shouting, "Gramps! Gramps! Gramps!" He took him to the hospital as quickly as possible, his face filled with sorrow. He sat beside him, waiting anxiously, until Gramps finally started to wake up. When he called out to Uruma, Uruma jumped up, overjoyed. His grandpa, however, told him that he wouldn't be able to help for a while, and warned him to be careful. Uruma reassured him that he'd be fine, and told him to focus on taking a break. Uruma was filled with rage, knowing this was the work of Koga. Suddenly, they heard a knock at the door, and in came two police officers, Anzai and Ota. They had heard about the fire and informed Uruma that the police suspected arson due to the intensity of the flames. Anzai made a remark about how misfortune continues to fall upon Uruma, and asked if he knew anything about it. Ota was surprised by Anzai's blunt words and asked him to reconsider what he was saying, though Anzai insisted that he didn't mean anything by it. Remembering something, Anzai then asked Uruma if he had anything more to say. Uruma asked him if there was anything else, and Anzai informed him that while the fire was extinguished, the house was completely burnt down. With his grandfather still in the hospital, he asked Uruma, "Shun-kun, what will you do about housing? Uruma hadn't expected such a question, and didn't know how to respond. Later that night, Uruma had found a place to stay, and safely stored the few belongings that hadn't burned. It was at Officer Uta's apartment. She apologized for the mess in her place, though Uruma didn't care. What caught his attention, though, were her clothes and bottles scattered around the room. Uta noticed his gaze and felt embarrassed, rushing to gather everything. Then she remembered something. She only had one bed. Uruma was shocked when he heard this, and Uta turned to him. She asked if that would be okay. The same night, Uruma was sitting on the couch, feeling nervous and confused, replaying Uta's words in his head, wondering what exactly she had meant. After finishing her shower, she came out and gently called to him as she dried her hair, then suggested that they go to bed. Uruma became even more flustered, sweating more and more with each passing moment. They headed to bed, and finally, he realized what she had meant was simply asking if it was okay for him to sleep on the floor. Uruma understood that being under the same roof as a detective would make things more difficult for him to move, and that Koga wouldn't wait for him. He tried to shake off those thoughts and calm himself, reassuring himself that everything would be fine, and that he would get through it as he always did. Morning came and it was time for school. During judo class, the coach told them to pair up with the person next to them. Uruma turned to his classmate, Kurosawa-kun, and asked if they could have a good practice together, but Kurosawa didn't seem as thrilled. Uruma awkwardly smiled and suggested that they do their best. As everyone began training, Kurosawa became frustrated, telling Uruma to hurry up and make his move. However, his attack was blocked and he was kicked in the back. Kurosawa advised him to use his back more in the throws. Uruma also mentioned that he didn't get along well with judo. Kurosawa grew more irritated from just looking at Uruma. They stood up again, and Kurosawa, with a sly grin, prepared for another attack. He planned to throw Uruma with all his strength, not caring if it would break his back. He grabbed Uruma unexpectedly and lifted him, but Uruma quickly caught on, countering by kicking Kurosawa's leg and breaking his balance, causing him to fall to the ground. Kurosawa stared at Uruma in fear, unable to believe what had just happened. Meanwhile, Uruma himself was surprised by how he had revealed his true strength in front of all his classmates, who were equally shocked at what they had just witnessed. Uruma, however, felt uncomfortable with what had happened. After class's end, Uruma was on his way home when Kurosawa stopped him, asking if he had a moment. They went behind the school, where Kurosawa confronted him. "Your house was on fire, right?" "It was me who did that," Kurosawa said. Uruma couldn't believe what he had just heard and tried processing it. Quickly, he grabbed Kurosawa by his shirt, speaking in a menacing tone. "Why'd you do it?" Kurosawa, terrified by Uruma's intense glare, confessed that it was Kuga who ordered him to do it. Despite knowing it was wrong, he had no choice, because Kuga had threatened to take his childhood friend as a hostage. Kurosawa's tone changed as he explained that Kuga was the reason the club was in a mess. He remembered the time when Kuga forced them into gambling. The others were forced to play with him, as he wouldn't leave them alone and belittled them constantly. Kuga would cheat and wrong Kurosawa repeatedly, a monster in their midst. One time, Kurosawa got lucky and won the game. Kuga stood up and demanded that the loser hand over a finger. The boy tried to resist, tears streaming down his face, but Kuga, his eyes showed no mercy. He grabbed the boy's hand tightly and coldly said he would only take one finger. Without any pity, he cruelly chose which finger, breaking it with force amidst the boy's cries, leaving him sobbing on the ground. Kuga was a real monster, devoid of any empathy. He laughed indifferently and apologized, but his words were empty. Kurosawa stood, paralyzed in shock, unable to act. When a girl barged in, furious, telling Kuga to stop, since it was his childhood friend. She scolded Kuga, reminding him that as an athlete, he shouldn't act like this. Kurosawa thought his end was near, but for some reason, Kuga laughed and apologized to her. Ever since then, Kuga used his power over Kurosawa, leading to the day he ordered him to set fire to Uruma's house. Kurosawa was stunned by the request and wanted to know the reason, but Kuga yelled at him, saying that he didn't owe him an explanation. Then he threatened him with his friend Anna, warning that if he didn't do it, he'd introduce him to Anna. Uruma listened to Kurosawa's story trying to piece everything together.
So he's got his eyes on Ana-san. But Kuga said introduce me, didn't he?
Uruma was confused, knowing that Kuga wouldn't hesitate to exert his dominance over any girl he liked. The thought irritated Uruma. Kurosawa pleaded with Uruma to protect him and his friend, believing Uruma's strength could save them. Even though Kurosawa didn't know why Kuga had his sights set on Uruma, he told them that they were on the same side. Uruma wanted to see Ana-san, and asked Kurosawa if he had a picture of her. Kurosawa quickly took out his phone, searching for her photo, while nervously warning Uruma not to fall for her. He finally showed her picture to Uruma, who remarked that she was beautiful, but was surprised because she looked like someone. Uruma put on a mask to disguise himself, and began following the girl, Ana. Uruma had already apologized to Kurosawa, telling him that he couldn't help. But despite disappointing him, something about this girl troubled Uruma. Sugisaka Ana, a second-year student, was part of the volleyball club and considered one of the most beautiful girls among the boys. According to Kurosawa, she didn't have a boyfriend. Uruma wanted to know why Kuga was following her and why he hadn't done anything to her, as well as the reason behind her striking resemblance to Kyo-chan. She seemed like the perfect material for revenge, but first, he needed to thoroughly investigate her and gather evidence about Kuga. Ana entered a store, and Uruma noticed it appeared to cater exclusively to men. He followed her inside and ordered pork ramen. Ana's order arrived shortly after. An extra large pork ramen bowl. She thanked them with a sweet smile, leaving Uruma surprised from afar, not believing that she could eat all that on her own. She began eating rapidly and finished in record time, 3 minutes and a few seconds. The restaurant owner complimented her speed and mentioned that the leaderboard was filled with her name. Uruma, still eating, glanced at the board and was shocked to see that she had topped the leaderboard in every spot. She told him that she would do her best not to lose. Uruma was still in disbelief, wondering if she was a professional eater. When he noticed Kuga's name under hers, he was surprised to realize that Kuga also came to this place, and Ana was just barely ahead of him in the rankings. Uruma began to think that maybe Kuga saw her more as a rival than as a woman. Ana left the restaurant, and Uruma hurried to follow after her, finishing his meal quickly while wondering if there was any interaction between her and Kuga. Holding his stomach from all that he ate, Uruma noticed that Ana entered a furniture store next. She seemed to be shopping normally. At this point, Uruma felt this had nothing to do with Kuga. But then, something struck him. Kagu. 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 Then it hit him. Kagu meant furniture in Japanese, and by rearranging 2 letters, it became Kuga. Shocked, Uruma realized it was an anagram, and that they must be connected. Afterward, he followed her to her home, which was 2 stations away from the school. He watched her closely, but noticed something unusual. Then he saw something on a table. A family photo of Ana and Kyo. Uruma pondered what he saw and finally realized that they were relatives. Their mothers must have been sisters, meaning Kuga couldn't harm her. He thought about using this information, but he needed more. As Ana was walking, someone called her name. She turned and found a girl who asked if they could talk, but in reality, it was Uruma, disguised in that outfit. She was surprised by the strange girl who appeared in front of her. It was the only way for Uruma to investigate the relationship between Ana and Kuga, but she was afraid of being exposed. He introduced himself as a girl named Urushibata, a first-year student, and then told her that she wanted to ask her about Kuga. Ana was shocked when she heard his name. They went to a restaurant, and Urushibata told her about the terrible bullying Kuga was doing. Ana already knew about it through Kurosawa. She remained silent for a few moments, and Uruma was afraid of being exposed, wondering if his plan was good enough. Ana's expression changed, and tears began to fall from her eyes as she felt deep sadness. Uruma was surprised by her reaction, and realized that she was extremely emotional. She threw herself into his arms, crying. At that moment, Uruma realized that his plan was working a little too perfectly. Urushibata explained that she didn't intend for things to go this far, but talking to Ana made her feel better. Ana took Uruma's hand and placed it on her chest to feel how fast her heart was beating. Uruma felt as if his heart was about to burst out, and thought that Ana was somewhat crazy. Her expression changed again, becoming more serious, and she promised that because her heart was beating like that, she would help her. Uruma felt that things were escalating quickly. Then Ana noticed that Urushibata had a tough body. She began touching him, discovering his muscles, and told her that she had a cute face. Uruma blushed from her words, feeling strange and embarrassed. Anna then felt sad again, not believing that Kuga was bullying cute people. She told her that she was in the process of changing Kuga. Anna felt that Kuga seemed like an evil boss, and that he had changed a lot from before. Uruma was surprised and asked her if she had known him from before, which was something he had already thought about. Anna began to explain that he was a close friend of her cousin, and they used to play together. He used to tell her that she was different from Kyo-chan on the inside, but they shared the same face. He treated her kindly and smiled at her with innocence. She felt sad because he used to be considerate of others, and she couldn't believe he had become like this. Suddenly, she looked at her phone and screamed when she saw the time. She stood up quickly and apologized to Urushibara, telling her that she had something important to do. Uruma remained seated, quietly surprised by her immense energy, much like a storm. He left a few moments later, realizing they had known each other for a long time, and then felt embarrassed and he remembered that he was wearing these clothes, which weren't that helpful. He felt a bit frustrated. He then heard voices nearby. When he looked, he was shocked to see Kuga, with Anna holding on to his arm. Uruma stood in shock at what he saw, wondering if they were dating. He decided to follow them, but noticed that he wasn't the only one doing so. He wondered who it could be, but to his surprise when he turned around, it was Kurosawa. Kurosawa was puzzled by the girl who was looking at him, but he quickly realized it was Uruma. Uruma hurriedly shut his mouth, afraid of being exposed. Kurosawa wanted to understand why he was wearing those clothes, but Uruma asked him to shut up. He didn't want to cause a scene here. Then Anna noticed Kurosawa and approached him, asking what he was doing. Kurosawa froze in place upon seeing Kuga, and Anna told him that she was dating Kuga. Kurosawa's mind froze when he heard this, unable to believe what he was hearing. At that moment, Anna noticed Urushibara, recognizing her from back before. Uruma turned around, smiling. Anna asked what kind of relationship they had, and Kurosawa replied in a strange tone, saying that they were dating. Uruma was shocked by his reaction. Anna was overjoyed and asked him to tell her about it. They headed to a place and sat at a table together. Anna congratulated Kurosawa, who was still mentally absent, while Uruma found himself in that situation due to Kurosawa's mistake. He watched Kurosawa's lips in fear, unsure of what he would say next. Then, suddenly, Kurosawa spoke in a strange tone.
How long have you guys been dating?
Anna told him that it had been about half a year. Kurosawa started talking to himself in a low voice. Half a year means they might have kissed. No way. Kuga's done more than that in 6 months. Kurosawa couldn't stop himself from thinking about it. The thoughts invaded his mind and he couldn't control himself. So he told them that they had been dating for about 3 months and that everything was going great between them. Then he asked about their relationship. Anna clarified that their relationship hadn't progressed that far yet and told him that she wanted to take care of Kuga. Uruma didn't understand what she meant by that. At that point, Kurosawa came to his senses, and tears of joy began to flow from his eyes as he told her that taking care of Kuga was the most important thing. Uruma couldn't believe that Kurosawa was crying, so he tried to save the situation before it got worse by telling them that they had to leave. Kurosawa was surprised by this, but Uruma grabbed him, and they quickly left together. Anna and Kuga were left alone, and Kuga asked her to leave. Anna's expression changed. On the other hand, Uruma removed his wig in disguise, ending up satisfied with the final result. He realized in the end that he would have to use Sugisaka Anna against Kuga. Far away, under the train bridge, Anna and Kuga stood away from the people. He asked her about what had happened earlier. Anna was scared and apologized to him, though he didn't listen. He punched her hard in the stomach. She fell to the ground in pain, continuing to apologize while crying, but he showed her no mercy and told her that he was going to teach her body a lesson. Everyone was warning Anna about Kuga, shocked at how a girl like her could hang out with someone like him. But her thoughts were different. She knew that deep down, he was kind. She was determined not to give up on him and bring back the real Kuga she had known from before. Kuga kicked her again and asked what she meant when she said she was taking care of him.
Why are you saying that?
Anna started apologizing through her tears. But he didn't understand and punched her in the stomach so hard she threw up. He grabbed her mouth roughly and told her that saying she was taking care of him meant allowing him to do whatever he wanted. He pushed her against the wall. Though he stopped. Seeing her face made him remember Kyo-chan. He threw her to the ground and stormed off angrily. Anna remained on the ground, clutching her stomach in terrible pain. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer and burst into sobs. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Uruma noticed a commotion. When he turned around, he saw that Kaname had returned, and all their classmates were happy to see her back. Kaname looked around for him, and when she saw him, she smiled at him. Uruma was surprised by this, but smiled back at her. After school, he headed to the hospital to visit his grandpa to check on his condition. Gramps told him that he was feeling better, and that there was no nerve damage, so he would be discharged next month. Uruma felt reassured about his grandfather's health, and then told him that he was going to take down the fourth one. His grandpa told him that he wouldn't be with him this time. He warned him not to act suspiciously, because the investigators were on their way. He advised him to be cautious. Uruma smiled slyly, eager to begin his revenge anew. A girl was running down the school hallway when her classmate noticed her and asked where she was going. The girl got flustered and told her that she was going to do some morning practice. Her classmate understood and encouraged her to do her best. The girl stopped in front of a door, hesitated for a moment, and then opened it. Her expression was filled with fear and hesitation. Inside, Kuga was waiting for her, visibly angry. He told her she was late. The girl panicked when she saw him in that state. Behind the door, a group of boys stood. Kurosawa approached them, curious about why they were gathered there. They told him they couldn't go inside because Kuga was there. One of the boys was crying, scared for his girlfriend, because of Kuga. He started shouting and cursing Kuga, but another classmate tried to calm him down, worried that Kuga might hear him. Kurosawa was left stunned, thinking about Anna. Moments later, the door swung open violently, and Kuga walked out, locking eyes with Kurosawa. Kuga approached him and thanked him, leaving Kurosawa shocked by what he had heard. Then, Kuga grabbed him by the clothes and punched him in the face. One of the boys tried to stop him, but Kuga turned to hit him as well, telling him not to stand in his way. He then looked at Kurosawa and said, "Kurosawa, I'll let you off with one." Kurosawa didn't understand what he meant by that, but he was certain it didn't mean Kuga would leave him with just one finger. Kuga stepped forward and stomped on Kurosawa's arm, shattering the bones inside, filling the place with his screams. Kuga left him lying on the ground and walked away. Just then, Kyo-chan called out to him from above, asking if he still hadn't finished off Uruma. Kuga told him that he would, that all the strange stuff was happening because of Uruma. Kyo-chan asked if he was scared. Kuga's expression changed and he said,
I'm super happy to get to finish him with my own two hands.
Kuga was thinking of a way to end Uruma. He decided he would start by breaking both Uruma's arms and legs, then spitting on him. He continued explaining his brutal plan for how far he would take down Uruma. Kyo-chan was impressed, while Kuga was delighted at the thought of it. Suddenly, Kuga's phone notifications went off. He wondered who had sent him a message. When he opened it, he found a message telling him that it was his special person and that she was being held hostage, along with a picture of Anna tied up. Far away, deep in the forest, specifically inside one of the trucks, Uruma had placed Anna there. He wasn't happy with what he was doing, but he had no other choice. In the past, when they were all children, all the kids were fascinated by Kuga and his strength. He would tell them that he would become the strongest judoka in the world. Kuga used Uruma to show off his strength in front of their classmates, knowing that Uruma was much weaker than him. Kuga would deceive him, saying that if Uruma could beat him, he would stop bullying him. Uruma tried many times, but Kuga was far stronger. He would predict Uruma's moves and throw him onto the ground and rocks without caring if Uruma got hurt. Kuga treated him that way repeatedly, until one day, Uruma decided to stop it and asked his grandpa to help him defeat Kuga. Gramps bluntly told him that Uruma's body strength was far from Kuga's level, and that it was impossible for him to defeat Kuga using normal means. Uruma was very serious about this, and told his grandpa that he didn't plan to use ordinary means. Seeing his grandson's determination, his grandfather began to train him rigorously, using intense and harsh methods that were not suitable for his age. But Uruma was deeply determined to reach his goal. Eventually, his grandfather told him to uproot one of the trees in the forest. He was allowed to keep trying until he succeeded. As all that time passed, Kuga was also training and getting stronger. So Uruma decided to make the challenge even harder and chose a bigger, rougher tree. His grandpa told him that it was impossible to uproot it, but Uruma insisted on it. From that day on, he tried with all his might to uproot the tree. Days turned into months until finally, one day, he succeeded in pulling it up from the ground and threw it down. Gramps was impressed with him and what he had done, and told him that he was now ready, and that no other human could defeat him. Back in the present, Uruma sat quietly, waiting for Kuga to arrive. The moment Kuga got close, Uruma could sense his presence. Kuga was walking quickly, shouting,
Uruma! Get out here!
Kuga shouted for Uruma to come out, but he realized it wasn't working. Annoyed by the wait, he approached the cabin, telling Uruma that what he was doing was stupid. He didn't care whether Anna was a hostage or not. He stopped at the door, thinking about his other comrades who had all disappeared. He didn't know what awaited him inside, and didn't care if there was a trap. Without hesitation, he kicked the door down and entered, but shock crossed his face. He saw Uruma sitting calmly on the ground. He hadn't expected to see that, and was surprised to see tatami mats and the judo uniform dogi Uruma was wearing. With a serious tone, Uruma told him, "You're late." Kuga was left speechless, stunned that Uruma hadn't tried to hide. He asked what Uruma was trying to do. Uruma then began explaining what happened 4 years ago, and how Kuga was responsible for the death of his parents and his brother's severe injuries. Kuga burst out laughing as soon as he heard that, finally understanding the reason behind all of this, and told Uruma that he had completely forgotten about that. Uruma told him that back then, he couldn't do anything. Kuga couldn't stop laughing and told him that he still wouldn't be able to do anything, because they were different and on completely different levels. Kuga then started saying that he wouldn't forgive Uruma. Even if he started crying, he said that he would eliminate both him and his brother. Uruma silenced him by throwing something at him. Kuga paused for a moment and was shocked to see it was a dogi. He didn't understand what Uruma was trying to do. Uruma then asked him to change his clothes. Kuga couldn't believe Uruma was challenging him to judo, thinking he could win. He became furious, feeling insulted as he realized the reason Uruma was wearing that outfit. Kuga started shouting at him, unable to believe that Uruma thought he could defeat the strongest judoka in Japan.
What do you think you're doing?
Kuga asked. Uruma calmly replied that he would take him down, face him head on, and finally get rid of him. Kuga couldn't believe those words were coming out of Uruma's mouth. Kuga wore the dogi and stood facing Uruma, whose expression remained cold and distant. Kuga broke the silence and told Uruma that he wouldn't show any mercy until he completely destroyed him. He told Uruma to get ready, and at that moment, Uruma adjusted his stance and motioned with his hand for Kuga to come at him. That gesture irritated Kuga, fueling his anger even more. He rushed towards Uruma, preparing his hands to grab him. Uruma successfully defended himself by countering Kuga's arms and trying to take him down, but he couldn't move or lift him. Uruma was surprised and felt the danger, so he decided to retreat. Kuga quickly followed, grabbing Uruma by his uniform. Kuga had been a champion, winning every match from elementary school to high school, despite not having any special techniques. Instead, he would simply grab his opponents and throw them aside. A large number of judoka had been thrown by him. His physical strength and grip power made it nearly impossible to defeat him, especially his grip, which was rumored to have a force equivalent to 180 kilograms. Although the exact number wasn't confirmed, it was close to the truth. Uruma knew that if Kuga grabbed hold of you, he would throw you, and that would mean defeat. So he desperately resisted, using both his hands to grip Kuga's arm, trying to push him away. However, due to Kuga's solid physique, Uruma's fingernails were severely damaged and began to detach from their places. Uruma noticed this, but Kuga remained calm. Slowly, Kuga began to lift Uruma off the ground, raising him to a considerable height. He laughed mockingly, and, with great force, threw Uruma down to the ground, as if he were a beast devoid of any human qualities. Uruma hit the ground hard, and Kuga approached him, sitting on top of him.
Now, our judo is over.
Kuga sneered. The fight seemed to be nearing a quick end, with Kuga confident in his victory. He threw his famous punch at Uruma, thinking he had won. But he was shocked when he looked down and noticed Uruma had disappeared. Kuga quickly scanned the area, only to find Uruma standing in front of him, calmly patting down his dogi. Surprised, Kuga asked how Uruma had managed to escape his grip. Uruma followed his grandpa's advice, who had told him to spin the moment he was grabbed, unlike most people who would try to pull away. Uruma stood tall again, ready to continue the fight. Kuga laughed and realized how serious Uruma was, and that he had been training hard. Without wasting any more time, Kuga charged at him like a beast, grabbing him effortlessly, lifting him even faster this time, and throwing him. But Uruma landed on the ground with perfect calm and grace, balancing on the tips of his toes. Kuga couldn't believe it. What? Uruma told him that he disrespected everyone in the judo club and bragged about his strength to everyone he met. Are you serious? Kuga couldn't stand hearing that, and rushed at Uruma again, screaming,
Don't mess with me!
But this time, Uruma avoided his grip and attack, grabbed Kuga by the arm instead, lifted him high, and threw him face first into the ground. Kuga's teeth broke. Blood exploded from parts of his face. He lay on the ground, feeling excruciating pain. Uruma told him that because Kuga had never been thrown before, he didn't know how to defend himself properly. Meanwhile, Kuga was still in shock, trying to comprehend the fact that Uruma had successfully hurt him. Holding his mouth, he wondered to himself, Me? Thrown by Uruma? What? How? Uruma interrupted his thoughts and asked, as the blood started to shed. Then, with a serious tone, he added, There's still a lot to come. That attack was so powerful that it left Kuga in a miserable state, even breaking some of his bones. Kuga tried to move and stand up, while Uruma, feeling a sense of frustration seeing him in such a condition, left him lying on the ground, struggling to get back on his feet. A few moments later, Uruma returned, saying, Let's end it with this. A barrel? Kuga was puzzled. He didn't understand why Uruma had brought it here. He wondered if there was something inside.